Chapter 478, The Era of Crazy Evolution. Crunch, crunch, crisp sounds of chewing echoed in the depths of the night, which was soon followed by a faint dragon prestige. The dragon's prestige was extremely faint. For those present in North Canyon, even the weakest among them were at least of the Tier 2 Transcendent, so they could easily ignore such dragon prestige. However, what left them in surprise was that, accompanied by the chewing sound, the dragon prestige grew stronger. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the people who had turned around as promised and even those who had already retreated beyond North Canyon, they had no idea that the calf-sized little tenth was undergoing its first metamorphosis of life at a speed visible to the naked eye. Purple scales appeared on its body surface, and became harder and harder by the moment. Its pair of tender horns gradually enlarged, with faint purple electric arcs streaking around them. Of course, that wasn't all. The most significant change was in its size. In just a few breaths, it had grown several times bigger, and as a result, its entire body had become stronger. Ruhar! A loud dragon roar, growing louder and louder, echoed through the canyon as a dragon prestige that could be labeled as terrifying emerged. Because at this moment, Little Tenth emitted the aura of a Tier 1 Transcendent, which happened to be the terrifying trait of a race found only in myths and legends. It was born as a Transcendent, which already put it at a level where it could be called invincible among its peers. A short while after this, amidst the quaking of the ground, various mutant beasts of Misty Mountains slowly raised their heads, looking towards the heart of Misty Mountains. Just because at this moment, a very familiar aura had emerged. Greetings, Divine Tree. Greetings, Master. Amidst respectful greetings, the mutant clans and powerful mutant beasts bowed their heads, one by one. Even Lung Feng and the other humans who had been guarding outside North Canyon, kneeled down on one knee, welcoming the absolute master of Misty Mountains. Ah! Nodding slightly, Wuxia also controlled his tree body to emerge from the depths of North Canyon. However, having thought of something, Wuxia also restrained his desire to return to his true size. Currently, this form was just too large, far beyond what North Canyon could accommodate. It would be best to return to a size similar to before. With this thought in his mind, Wuxia controlled his tree body and began to grow little by little. Before long, a towering willow tree, soaring into the clouds, entered everyone's sight. Still as majestic as ever, still as spectacular as ever. Be that as it may, everyone knew that the Divine Tree's power had far exceeded this, because not long ago, they had all sensed a majestic wave of fluctuations coming from the horizon. The source of that fluctuation was the familiar Divine Tree. With these thoughts swirling in her mind, the coiled Little White flew to the sky, eagerly asking, "Master, have you already?" Before Little White could finish her words, a young figure appeared on one of the branches of Wuxia's tree body, nodding slightly and responding, "Luckily, I broke through." "Broke through? You really broke through?" Suddenly ecstatic, like a child, she let out a roar high up in the sky. In a flash, the news of Wuxia's breakthrough swept through every corner of Misty Mountains like a hurricane. At this moment, seeing Ice Flood Dragon acting like a child, Wuxia tacitly approved. This breakthrough was crucial. At least to a certain extent, it declared his status as the Overlord. In the short term, no human or beast would dare to provoke him. Perhaps there were some, but they would likely end up dead. Even the Overlord of the Deep Sea, a creature as huge as a landmass itself, had no choice but to back down in the face of Wuxia's natal flying blade. It could be imagined how terrifying Wuxia was now. Taking a deep breath and experiencing this hard-won moment, Wuxia also became somewhat excited. Only deep within Misty Mountains could he freely express his emotions like this. However, just at this moment, as if noticing something, Wuxia's pupils suddenly shrank. The next moment, a strange purple creature suddenly entered Wuxia's sight. The strange creature bore striking resemblance with a giant dragon. It had a pair of strong-looking dragon wings on its back, purple scales covered its entire body, and a pair of purple horns on its head. At a glance, it appeared a bit cute, but it also carried a sense of majesty. Little Tenth. With a hint of surprise, Wuxia also called out, "A master." Seemingly nervous, the strange creature only peeked out half of its body from behind a large rock. But after a moment, as if having reached a confirmation, it called out again, "A master." "Aha." Nodding slightly, Wuxia gazed towards Little Tenth, a hint of pampering flickering in his gaze. This little guy was nurtured by him and was also one of the most valued descendants, one could say. With this in mind, a slight smile crept onto Wuxia's lips. Time really flies. A new generation has been born in this era of transcendence already. Little Tenth, Little Scorpion, as well as Lupin, Slytherin, and Oris, among others. At this moment, seeing Little Tenth still looking somewhat nervous, Yuziu reached out with one hand. The next moment, under Little Tenth's somewhat astonished gaze, a purple flower blossomed in Yuziu's right hand. This was a very mysterious flower, translucent, and with a purple aura swirling around. Upon closer inspection, the flower was surprisingly woven from countless intricate electric arcs. Elemental flower, lightning element flower, a supreme treasure nurtured by Yuziu. Do you want it? With a hint of a smile playing on his lips, Yuziu beckoned towards Little Tenth. Ah! For a moment, Little Tenth kept gawking at the purple flower held in Yuziu's hand, swallowing a mouthful of saliva. As a lightning attribute creature, this lightning element flower held an indescribable temptation for him. Right at this moment, with a flick of Yuziu's hand, the lightning element swished through the air, and floated before Little Tenth. This spirit flower should accelerate your growth, so make good use of it. With that said, Yuziu exhorted, for legendary species like you with long lifespans, natural growth can indeed make you a powerhouse who can dominate the world. However, in this era of crazy evolution, natural growth is simply too slow. Far too slow. So, little one, use all means to accelerate your growth. Don't let down the reputation of your dragon clan. Chapter 479, Supreme Domain. Now, Little Tenth was indeed a member of the dragon clan. It was a true giant dragon. Though it was young, the horns on its head already spoke of its magnificence loud and clear. With this in mind, Yuziu focused his gaze on it, confirming once again. Race. Lightning dragon, a legendary species, a terrifying existence that truly reigns at the top of the food chain, and with a very long lifespan, reaching adulthood at an age of 100 years. Rank, Tier 1 Transcendent Innate Talents. Elemental immunity, as a legendary species, the lightning dragon can mitigate most elemental attacks, especially those of the lightning attribute, with absolute exemption. Dragon breath, the purest form of dragon breath, capable of breathing a lightning beam that tears through heaven and earth. Unique abilities, dragon physique, as a dragon, its physique far surpasses that of ordinary mutant beasts, so much so that even at just the Tier 1 Transcendent, it possesses a terrifying power that makes even the Tier 2 Transcendents wary. Lightning dragon's roar, as it roars, the might of a dragon is fully displayed, capable of influencing weather around it, summoning rolling thunderclouds. Lightning eater. It's able to absorb lightning and replenish its own needs. After going through his status screen, Yuziu couldn't help but silently praise. This was everything Little Tenth had gained after painstakingly refining his bloodline. The bloodline of a legendary species, the lightning dragons, that possessed a combat power that surpassed that of their peers, if not far surpassed them. However, the most terrifying aspect was that they would become a Tier 4 Transcendent upon adulthood, becoming a natural disaster. And this was why, in Legends, the lairs of dragons were always close to environments matching their attributes. For instance, the lair of the rock dragon was surrounded with dry and cracked rocks. Or, the lair of the ice dragon had endless glaciers in its vicinity. This wasn't just because they chose these lairs, it was also because when they reached adulthood, when they were not suppressing their strength alone affected their locality, turning thousands of kilometers into scorched earth or glaciers. They were like walking and breathing natural disasters, terrifying to the extreme. Unfortunately, it takes 100 years to reach adulthood. Yuziu heaved a sigh, feeling a bit helpless. If it were any other era, Little Tenth would have been fine. But in this era of crazy evolution, 100 years was truly an unreachable span of time. With time, natural disaster-class entities would continuously emerge like mushrooms after rain. In other words, this era didn't appear that friendly to legendary species. However, looking at Little Tenth, who was come to him and even affectionately rubbing him head against him, Yuziu's lips curled slightly, once again admonishing, "Little one, remember not to use the elemental flower to transform your life form into an elemental life form. What's more important for you now is to accelerate your growth." At this point, Yuziu added in a solemn voice, "I hope that after absorbing this elemental flower, you'll step into the Tier 3 and possess a certain degree of self-preservation ability." Little Tenth nodded vigorously to Yuziu's advice, earnestly swearing, "Understood, master. I promise." With that, Little Tenth couldn't help but glance at the purple flower in his claws, seemingly woven from countless intertwining purple lightning arcs. Only those who have truly held it in their hands can really understand the power contained within this spirit flower. It's a terrifying power capable of destroying everything. If the power of this spirit flower is to be unleashed, not to mention Misty Mountains, even the surrounding cities would be leveled to the ground. And yet, the Master has given me such a precious spirit flower. Thinking of this, little Tenth stared at Yu's tree body, feeling even more grateful. At this moment, Yu's gaze shifted away, no longer focusing on the young lightning dragon. No matter how astonishing one's innate talent, without growth, it would all be in vain. At this point, Yu had done everything he could, now everything rested on the young lightning dragon to determine his own path. More than anything else, Yu was now more concerned about Misty Mountains. Exhaling a long deep breath, Yu shifted his gaze on a nearby figure, with a face like sculpture, simple and unadorned, but with a body tall like a mountain. Qing Gang, one of the elemental commander Yu relied on the most. Qing Gang, calling out, Yu's gaze became focused. "I'm here," replying in a respectful voice. The young man was already kneeling on one knee, his gaze burning as he looked at the teenage form of Yu. "In the coming days, I need you to expand the territory of Misty Mountains, and when necessary, I will assist you with the mist." "Yes, master." Qing Gang nodded his acknowledgement, the corner of his lips rising into a smile. Finally, this day has come. However, as if having thought of something, Qing Gang lifted his head and asked, "Master, when expanding, if we encounter human cities, what should we do? If you can subdue them, then subdue them. If not, drive them away. And if they refuse even that, then make them disappear from the face of this earth." Yu instructed with a rare coldness in his voice before adding, "Wherever the thick fog covers is the territory of our Misty Mountains." "Understood." Responding, Qinggan understood everything. Now that Master has made up his mind, it's a done deal. And considering that Master has already broken through, the expansion will be much easier. At this moment, Yu's gaze shifted again, towards a figure not far away, with a shoulder adorned with a flower that seemed to embrace all the beauty of the world. The present High Priestess of Misty Mountains, the five-colored spirit flower, Aurora, as well as the body she controlled. "Aurora?" "Here." Responding, Aurora's petals slightly trembled, displaying her excitement. "The quota for offerings will increase. Try to subdue more superhumans in the coming days under the guise of offering." "All right, master." A smile bloomed on the human body controlled by Aurora, pleased. With this, her resources would increase substantially. It should be brought to notice that with a continuous supply of resources, her spiritual energy had already reached 800,000 to 900,000, just a bit away from breaking through to the Tier 3. And when she becomes a Tier 3 Transcendent, Yu will also initiate a plan centered around Aurora. The Tower of Trials, a tower established for tempering one's mind, with Aurora standing at the top of the tower. A place where countless mutant beasts would challenge the tower to temper their mind. Of course, this was not without benefits for Yu. Although the Tower of Trials was intended to temper mutant beasts, it served Yu's purposes more than anything else. At that time, Yu would also leave a wisp of his soul to preside over this tower, through which he would observe numerous mutant beasts and temper his own state of mind. Now that he had become a Tier 4 Transcendent, many of the plans that Yu had in mind could be implemented one by one. The Tower of Trials was just one of them. Subjugating human cities, establishing the first research institute of Misty Mountains, as well as expanding territory, dispatching mutant beasts, war generals, or elemental commanders to venture out of Misty Mountains, showcased Yu's ambition to the fullest. He planned on creating an isolated society, a supreme domain far beyond anything in this era. In the future, even if myriad races emerged and flourished, Yu will be able to suppress them with the aid of this supreme domain. And establishing a monster kingdom was just one step in this process. Ashish, I'll be using war generals instead of generals to refer the previous generals, like Honey Badger, Wild Boar, and the rest, and generals for the 108 creatures joining Misty Mountains. Chapter 480 Status Screen. Expanding Territory. Standing quietly in the depths of North Canyon, Yu began to sort out his current achievements as a Tier 4 Transcendent. About 2 million spiritual energy, Yu murmured to himself as a faint smile appeared on his lips. Such abundant spiritual energy had already undergone a qualitative change. Now, even just the resonance of his spiritual energy alone could cause massive fluctuations in the air akin to a tsunami. What was even more terrifying was that each of his abilities and even his innate talents had undergone transformation. With this in mind, Yu's gaze shifted towards his status screen. Race, Mutant Willow Tree Rank, Tier 4 Transcendent, Natural Disaster, Evolution Points, 4 million can be obtained by absorbing unknown energy and refining under the sunlight, or by preying on other animals, even plants, and extracting from them. Innate talent, everlasting life, level 4. Spiritual energy never dries up, vitality never ceases. Seeds of life, level 4. You can now use your spiritual energy to nurture seeds. It utilizes one's spiritual energy as the source of life to give birth to seeds. These seeds can grow into trees at such astonishing speed that a vast, ancient forest can be created within moments. Instant, unawakened. It blooms and withers in an instant. Fleeting moment flower, as dazzling and eternal as fireworks, can freeze time in an instant. Current comprehension, 22%. Mastery of lightning, level 4. As a branch of elemental energy, the host can draw lightning and freely control it for defense, attack, or even shape his own attack to his own will. Unique abilities, Mutant Branch, level 4. Mutant Roots, level 4. Spiritual Field, level 4. Mastery of Mist, level 4. Hallucinogen, level 4. River of Earth, level 4. Flying Willow Leaf Blade, level 4. Blood Covenant, level 4. Blizzard, level 4. Wood Dragon, level 3. Minor Divine Ability, Crystallization, elementary level. Feather Firestorm, elementary level. Ice Age, elementary level. Lightning Strike, elementary level. Grand Divine Ability, Enlarging and Shrinking at Will, elementary level. After taking a deep look at the familiar and luxurious status screen, Wuxia felt somewhat satisfied. 4 innate talents, 5 divine abilities, and countless unique abilities. It would be hard to find a second person with such a luxurious status screen in the world. Unique abilities might be easier to come by, but innate talents and divine abilities were rare. It was only because Wuxia had great opportunities and immense luck that he could gather so many. Moreover, with the help of evolution points, he had fully developed all of these innate talents and divine abilities. If I want to advance further, these abilities must be integrated and polished. While pondering, spiritual energy began to surge within Wuxia. The next moment, with a burst of powerful aura, the world seemed to darken. At this moment, if one were to look towards the depths of North Canyon, they would certainly see dense clouds and mist rising from the earth. Mastery of mist was a very practical ability. With the increase in Wuxia's spiritual energy, the range covered by the dense fog generated by this ability has also expanded. Moreover, given some time, he could even shroud half of a continent with this fog. However, that was not the scariest part. What was truly frightening was that the mastery of mist could be combined with hallucinogen, with one obscuring the visibility, while the other confusing perception. Together they could turn the area covered by the mist into an isolated place, cut off from the rest of the world. As of now, wherever the fog passed by, beasts and humans alike retreated. And Wuxia intended to use these 2 abilities to shield himself from prying eyes. Boom! With a surge of billowing and rolling clouds of mist, the white mist covering the entire Misty Mountains grew even denser. Faintly, visibility was reduced to less than 3 meters. However, such visibility was quite common for the mutant beasts of Misty Mountains. In fact, most of them had evolved unique abilities to adapt to this mist. For example, the depths of the Storm Wolf clan's eyes often flickered with a faint green glow, which imparted them the ability to see through the fog. Whereas the Rat clan relied on their keen hearing. As long as Wuxia didn't use his hallucinogen ability, they could roam freely in the mist. However, while this thick fog was something the creatures of Misty Mountains were accustomed to, for outsiders, humans and other mutant beasts included, it was a true nightmare. It not only deprived them of their sight but also affected their other senses. Inside, this mist reduced their combat effectiveness by 40 to 50%. This was a testament of the sheer terror of this mist. Not to mention the mist beasts that Wuxia had yet to unleash. At this moment, visible to the naked eye, an endless expanse of mist spread out like waves in all directions. And wherever this fog passed, roars and growls echoed one after another as various clans hidden deep within Misty Mountains surged along the mist, following Qing Gang's lead. The mist was a signal of Misty Mountains. Every place shrouded in the mist was the territory of Misty Mountains. And their task was to guard this territory. Simply put, it was to expand their territory. Any mutant beasts daring to resist them were seen as enemies and mercilessly hunted down. For Wuxia, his current level of cultivation made the expansion of his territory an inevitable consequence. Given the current size of Misty Mountain's territory, just Wuxia alone could cover 1/5 of it, and his roots spread over the entire Misty Mountains underground. Let alone Uzu, even other mutant beasts, including the major clans of Misty Mountains, would find it difficult to accept such a narrow territory. Initially, Uzu refrained from expanding aggressively to avoid attracting attention, but now the time was ripe. Uzu would naturally no longer hold back. With this expansion, my territory will be 10 times larger than before. In other words, I'm going to truly occupy an area the size of a province in China, or even larger. Muttering to himself, Uzu playfully cast a glance in the direction of China. They should be panicking the most by now. However, China posed little threat to him now. If they struggled to deal with the invasion of Sea Beast, how could they possibly handle Uzu now? Ashish, as the status screen in the ROS was missing most details and many abilities, I decided to list it again, and again because this list is based on lower levels, and does not have corresponding upgrades in their introduction. So while I will update their levels, the introduction will remain older. Race, Mutant Willow Tree Rank, Tier 4 Transcendent, Natural Disaster. Evolution Points, 4 million, can be obtained by absorbing unknown energy and refining under the sunlight, or by preying on other animals, even plants, and extracting from them. Innate Talent, Everlasting Life, Level 4. Spiritual energy never dries up, vitality never ceases. Seeds of Life, Level 4. You can now use your spiritual energy to nurture seeds. It utilizes one's spiritual energy as the source of life to give birth to seeds. These seeds can grow into trees at such astonishing speed that a vast, ancient forest can be created within moments. Instant, unawakened. It blooms and withers in an instant. Fleeting Moment Flower, as dazzling and eternal as fireworks, can freeze time in an instant. Current Comprehension, 22%. Mastery of Lightning, Level 4. As a branch of elemental energy, the host can draw lightning and freely control it for defense, attack, or even shape his own attack to his own will. Abilities, Mutant Branch, Level 4. It's more robust and able to imbue different types of spiritual energy. Mutant Roots, Level 4. Each root is as dreadful as a flood dragon. They can absorb plants and animals as nutrients. What's even more terrifying is that upon contact with plants and animals, these roots can also extract spiritual energy, which further strengthens their ability to strangle their prey. Spiritual Field, Level 4. The concentration of 1 million spiritual energy can even distort magnetic fields, which in turn ripples through reality, affecting the surroundings. Mastery of Mist, Level 4. You can control the mist at your will. While the mist serves as the eyes, it can also transform into anything you want. Illusory World, Level 4. You can create an illusory world at the expense of spiritual energy, and make everything sink into it. River of Earth, Level 4. You can now transmute the land into a river, mimicking the way a river engulfs enemies. Just a slight misstep on their part can set the enemy to the point of no return. Blood Covenant, Level 4. Originating from the ancient blood lineage, this terrifying ability can create contracts using blood as a medium to bind others. However, what's even more terrifying is that through the blood pact, you can completely enslave others, from their bodies to their souls, creating entities akin to familiars. Flying Willow Leaf Blade, Level 4. After nourishing the willow leaf with your spiritual energy, continuously refining it, you can shoot the leaf like a blade. The purer the refinement, the more smoothly the spiritual energy can flow through it, and the farther the range and greater the power of the Flying Willow Leaf Blade. Wood Dragon, Level 3. The primary root has transformed into a dragon, taking one step to achieving the pinnacle. The absorption power of the primary root is greatly enhanced, enabling it to consume all things and devour everything, until it firmly takes root in the deepest part of the planet and uses the entire planet as a nutrient. Mastery of Snowstorm, Level 4. You can control local snowstorms and influence the weather, creating a blizzard of extreme cold. Absolute Parasitism. Using absolute control over the mist, you inject it into the enemy's limbs and bones, truly manipulating their body. Can only control the body, not interfere with the consciousness. Turtle's Breath. Like a turtle after taking a long breath, one can completely restrain one's own aura. If cultivated to the extreme, one can even become indistinguishable from inanimate objects. Minor Divine Ability, Crystallization, Elementary Level. By harnessing the power of the earth, one can crystallize parts or even the entirety of the body. This crystal-like body can significantly enhance one's defenses. If mastered, one can truly become indestructible. It would be next to impossible to destroy its user, unless attacked by another divine ability. Feather Firestorm, Elementary Level. Gathering an immense amount of fire element in the sky, one can create a massive deep red vortex. Within this vortex, an unending flurry of flame feathers keeps materializing, until they come down from the sky, incinerating everything. It is a terrifying offensive divine ability. Ice Age, elementary level. Using this ability, one could instantly freeze the earth, oceans, and even the air, turning a region into a glacier, reenacting the most primitive and terrifying Ice Age. Grand divine ability, enlarging and shrinking at will, elementary level. Consuming a certain amount of spiritual energy, one can reduce their size to the size of a dust particle, or grow to the size of mountains and hills. Simultaneously, the user's defense remains unchanged, only the size changes. Chapter 481, Sheeps in Captivity. At this moment, in the highest office of China was pervaded with silence, deathly silence. This is the 7th meeting since the invasion of sea creatures. 7 meetings had been held till now, almost twice a day. This was quite unimaginable in China. After all, a meeting of this level every bi-weekly could be considered quite frequent already. But now several had been held in just a few days. However, despite such frequent meetings, none of these bigwigs showed boredom. Instead, they all had dire expressions on their faces. Some even had an extremely gloomy look on their faces. A Tier 4 transcendent has appeared, what should we do? This question had been asked umpteenth time, yet it received only complete silence as an answer. Even the president, presiding over the meeting, remained momentarily silent. However, at this moment, if one were to look into the depths of the president's eyes, the man who had always been in control, they would find them slightly dim, with an indescribable complexity. With a deep sigh, the president of China gazed towards the door, calling out, "Come in." "Yes, sir," a reply came from the outside. Moments later, amidst the astonished gazes of each dignitary, a girl with fiery long hair comes into view. The girl was very beautiful and barefooted. Yet, no one was shocked by her appearance. Instead, their faces changed slightly, some even excitedly standing up. "Flame Princess, Empress He Ling Air," one exclamation followed another, the faces of everyone revealing a complex look. She was a legendary figure who broke through to Tier 3 in the midst of sea creatures' invasion, and became the first Tier 3 superhuman in the history of mankind. More importantly, she put her life at risk to stop the beast tide. In these few days her popularity has reached the highest in China. And now she has appeared here. From today onwards, He Ling Air will be the 17th minister with real authority in our China, and will the will of our China and determine China's future direction, the middle-aged president sitting in the main seat declared in a calm voice. Collective silence ensued, yet no one dared to speak. Only because at this moment, many ministers felt a sudden tightness in their chests, as if they were about to suffocate. That extremely frightful aura made them all feel palpitations from the bottom of their hearts. However, in that very instant, a discontent suddenly emerged. "Sir, this does not comply with the procedure." However, before he could finish with his words, a figure suddenly appeared behind that minister and suddenly grabbed his throat. Moments later, amidst the somewhat shocked gazes of the ministers and officials, the discontented minister suddenly burst into flames and slowly reduced into a wisp of smoke, unable to even scream. When the president is speaking, please refrain from interrupting. With a hint of amusement, Ling Air tactfully stepped behind the middle-aged president and stood quietly. Except, the playful smile tugging the corner of her lips made many involuntarily gulp a mouthful of saliva in nervousness. "Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Congratulations. This marks a great day for our nation as we welcome a new minister into the ranks." Amidst a somewhat forced voice, the minister sitting next to the ashes stood up and actively congratulated. "Had I not been a member of Congress, maybe I would have been the dead one." Thinking of this, a chill ran down his spine as a cold sensation seized his heart. Meanwhile, the president only spared a glance at the ashes and did not reprimand Ling Air. Instead, his gaze turned to the others, directly stating, "Ling Air has done a meritorious deed by stopping the sea beast invasion, and is the first person in our nation to do this. It's fitting for her to have a seat of honor." With that said, the president of China started tapping the table with his finger and ordered in a serious voice, "Ling Air, you have had close contact with the tree monster. Briefly explain your understanding of this Tier 4. "Yes, sir." Accepting the order with a nod, Ling Air stepped forward. A timely solemn expression appeared on her face as she began. "The Tier 4 represents invincibility, unmatched by those of lower tiers." It was a simple sentence, but it struck the hearts of everyone in the office like a heavy hammer. Right at that very moment, Ling Er heaved a long deep sigh before continuing with her description. If it so desires, that tree monster could annihilate our entire nation without a scratch. Silence ensued. The entire office sunk into an eerie silence. However, just then a figure, seemingly curious, stood up and asked, if it truly possesses such power, why hasn't it destroyed our country? If I remember correctly, we still have some grudges with the tree monster, don't we? Tisk, tisk. Glancing at the middle-aged man with a smile that wasn't quite a smile, Ling Er also asked, before the era of transcendence, humans were the masters of the world, capable of wiping out entire races. Why didn't they do it then? Well, taken aback for a moment, the person also exclaimed, how can you lump it with us? Why not? Saying so, Ling Er's tone turned colder as she added, the tier 4 signifies a reshuffle of one's hierarchy in life. Just as we humans view ants, now, in the eyes of the tree monster, what's the difference between us humans and ants? There are 2 reasons it hasn't acted against us. Firstly, although the tree monster is terrifying, its nature is benevolent and it doesn't want to cause unnecessary bloodshed. Secondly, it's because our nation, or more accurately, we humans, hold a certain value in its eyes. Regardless of the premise of these 2 points, it's absolutely unwise to provoke it. Otherwise, I believe it wouldn't hesitate to crush a few ants such as our country. Her tone was light, but Ling Er's words were spine-chilling, causing the eyelids of many ministers and officials to twitch involuntarily. It had to be admitted that Ling Er's words truly startled these ministers and officials to the point that now, they were mostly looking at each other in astonishment. However, at this moment, as if thinking of something, an old man suddenly added, if my guess is correct, humans should hold some value to the tree monster. How so? After a brief astonishment, others also asked in succession. Not to mention our human technology, but just recently, there have been some offering ceremonies between the tree monster and certain superhumans, which indicates that it has some plans regarding us humans. At this point, the old man raised his head and asked, I wonder if you've heard about the Western faith and our Eastern incense offerings. Of course we've heard of them. Nodding, everyone affirmed. In that case, it's not hard to explain. Saying so, the old man stood up and stated in a confident voice, I believe that with the continuous advancement in the hierarchy of life, one doesn't just need spiritual energy. For terrifying beings like the tree monster, if they seek further advancement, it may involve even more esoteric powers. At that point, the so-called power of faith, or even the power of incense offerings, could be what it seeks. Of course, this is just my speculation, nothing more than a guess. At this point, the old man sighed, expressing his helplessness. It would be best if it's not the case, otherwise not only us humans but even other mutant species would just be sheeps that it keeps in captivity. Chapter 482, Crescent Moon City? Sheeps, someone murmured, plunging the Chinese officials and ministers into silence. While it was just a possibility for now, it was the most likely scenario. And this was humans, never hesitating to find the worst intentions in others. However, just at this moment, knock, knock, knock. Sudden knocking on the door startled everyone. Come in. Receiving the permission, an anxious-looking civil servant hurriedly entered the office. What is it? In response to the president's query, the civil servant's face slightly changed before promptly answering, Sir, something really bad had occurred. Saying this, the civil servant gathered his thoughts before continuing with the report. Just now, we received news that the mist from Misty Mountains is spreading at a visible speed, and as of now, it has already enveloped 2 of our cities. Stupefied, everyone's expression couldn't help but freeze. However, after a moment, realization seemingly dawned upon everyone as their expressions suddenly changed drastically. One of them stepped forward, gave his speculation. Sir, if my guess is right, it means that Misty Mountains are expanding. Given the tree monster's enormous body that covered half of a city, Misty Mountains are far from being able to contain its body, so, it's invading our China, isn't it? Coldly snorting, the hot-blooded General Zhao promptly stood up. But before General Zhao could chime in, a voice suddenly intervened. In which direction is the mist from Misty Mountains spreading? The civil servant promptly replied to the president's question. In all directions. It's spreading in all directions. Not only has it enveloped 2 of our cities, but even the western desert and the northern region are being continuously eroded. Understood. The middle-aged president nodded as everything became clear to him. After a moment, he glanced at everyone and earnestly uttered 3 words, avoid any confrontation. If it were before, the president of China might have had the intention to challenge it, but after hearing Ling Er's description, He had already made up his mind to temporarily avoid any sort of direct confrontation. Hearing the president's motion, the others immediately glanced at each other, but they chose to remain silent. Even the relatively hot-headed generals, wearing a complex look on their faces, nodded in silence. The current tree monster was absolutely not someone they could defy. Just as Ling Er, the Empress, stated, it's absolutely unwise to provoke it. Otherwise, I believe the tree monster wouldn't hesitate to crush a few ants, including even a bigger ant like China. Meanwhile, in a city in China, Crescent Moon City. This was a city located some distance from Misty Mountains. It was a very prosperous city with sky-rise buildings here and there, and the streets bustling with traffic. Amidst the streets dazzling with neon lights, bustling crowds could be seen moving to and fro, resembling tides. From the distance, the flickering lights created a picturesque sight, too beautiful to be true. However, just at this moment, a gentle breeze brushed past everyone's face, eliciting a look of astonishment on countless people's faces, only because the gentle breeze brought in mist along with it, suddenly shrouding the city in fog. This fog was very light, like a thin veil. However, just a few breaths later, more mist surged from the horizon. Looking up, a vast expanse of dense fog was billowing towards the city, resembling a majestic army at the gates. Attack, we're under attack. Suddenly, a roar reverberated through the sky, shaking the station troops around the city. Thump, thump, thump. With hurried footsteps, countless fully armed soldiers arrived at the city walls, with even superhumans rushing out from the center of the city. At this moment, looking outside the tall city walls, everyone noticed pairs of shiny, seemingly glowing eyes in the depths of that overwhelming fog. At a glance, it was both a terrifying and unsettling sight. Meanwhile, looking at the dense fog, someone noticed the direction it was coming from and suddenly cried in astonishment, "No way! What is it?" Taken aback by his cry, the people around him looked at him with curiosity. "Don't you find this fog a bit familiar?" His question instantly elicited a change in everyone's expression. However, after a moment, as if realizing something, several people exchanged glances, their eyes flickering with horror. Misty Mountains. At the drop of these words, blood drained from the faces of these people. Misty Mountains were a subject of terror for everyone. In the current era, it was a symbol of a forbidden zone among forbidden zones. And now, much to their shock and dismay, Misty Mountains, which had never expanded before, was attacking. How is this possible? Some couldn't believe it, but as they watched figure after figure emerge from the dense mist, most humans' pupils shrank to the size of a pinhole. Right at that very moment, loud and heavy footsteps echoed from the dense mist, striking terror in the hearts of the residents of the city. Everyone peeled their eyes towards the source of the footsteps, and saw a shadow slowly emerging from the dense fog. The thing that caught them by surprise was that the figure cut a humanoid silhouette. Thump, thump, thump. As the footsteps drew closer, this figure became clearer. After a moment, a tall, muscular, and statuesque figure appeared in the sight of countless humans. "Hello everyone. I am Misty Mountain's Elemental Commander, Qing Gang." After greeting, Qing Gang glanced mischievously at the humans on the city wall. "It's still the same as always. Except, most humans have spiritual energy. Everyone has more or less gained a bit of strength. There are Tier 1s and Tier 2s, of course Tier 2s in smaller numbers, but still that's quite less for a city of this size." Crescent Moon City could not be considered a small city, but Qing Gang only caught the presence of about a dozen Tier 2 superhumans. A human city had a population in the millions, but there were only a dozen or so Tier 2s. Be that as it may, such a lineup of superhumans was still a bit amazing. And right at that very moment, as everyone heard Qing Gang's voice, transmitted from afar via spiritual energy, the faces of every superhuman changed drastically. The Elemental Commander? Everyone broke into a murmur, with many superhumans looking at each other. Obviously, the title, Elemental Commander, was unfamiliar to them. However, what left everyone in even more surprise was Qing Gang's appearance, simply because Qing Gang resembled no different than humans. Is this a humanoid mutant beast or a true human? Just as someone muttered this, the gazes of many superhumans towards Qing Gang became filled with complexity. At this moment, a prim and proper middle-aged man, dressed luxuriously and resembling the ruler of the city, suddenly appeared on the city wall and shouted loudly, "So it's the Elemental Commander of Misty Mountains." With that said, he clasped his hands and asked, "I wonder why you've come." However, before he could finish his sentence, Qing Gang directly stated, "To take over Crescent Moon City." Saying so, Qing Gang mobilized his spiritual energy, sending a shockwave centered around him. Then, his voice echoed in half of the city. From today onwards, Crescent Moon City belongs to Misty Mountains. Those who refuse to submit to Misty Mountains, please leave. As the words fell, Qin Gang's lips curled into a sneer as if he had thought of something, adding, "By the way, I'm just letting you guys know, don't make things difficult for me." Chapter 483 Invasion. However, just as Qin Gang's declared, a cold snort echoed from the city walls. "You say take over and you will, but do you think you're all powerful?" Reading, the mayor of Crescent Moon City, Gong Kai-feng, stepped out of the crowd, wearing a gloomy expression on his face. Crescent Moon City was his blood and sweat. It was precisely because he reigned over Crescent Moon City that he had access to vast resources, allowing him to advance to Tier 2, and even create a formidable force, the Moon Guardians. If he allowed Misty Mountains to take over the city, not only would all his efforts go to waste, but his cultivation might also come to a halt. After all, seizing someone's wealth was akin to killing their parents. And now this human from Misty Mountains was attempting to commit the crime of seizing his city. One could easily imagine how furious he was. Except he was extremely shrewd and never wore his emotions in public. Had there been someone with a quick temper, they might have drawn their weapons by now. Unfortunately, no matter how shrewd he was, it was of little use against Qin Gang, because Qin Gang had climbed all the way from the lowest level of strata to his current level, and as such, deeply understood humans. When a city was seized, the civilians were never the ones with the strongest opinions, it was always the privileged elites. "I've said it before, don't make things difficult for me," Qin Gang's faint voice echoed in the air. The next moment, in the somewhat incredulous gazes of the humans, the figure that emerged from the thick fog began to scatter and dissipate, reducing into dust and scattering along the wind. In just a few moments, it had completely disappeared from everyone's sight. However, the very next moment, Gong Kai-feng, Crescent Moon City's mayor, who was quietly standing atop the city wall, suddenly felt a chill down his back. Yet before he could react, a terrifying force struck him with a thunderous clap. At this moment, to the astonishment of the countless guards surrounding Gong Kai-feng, an overwhelming amount of dust started gathering behind the mayor of Crescent Moon City, gradually reshaping into the previous figure. And now, the burly figure was standing behind the mayor of Crescent Moon City, Gong Kai-feng, grabbing him by the neck. Boom! With a fierce push, the entire city wall trembled violently. Looking up, much to countless humans' disbelief, their city's strongest superhuman, their mayor, was actually pressed into the depths of the city wall. What was even more terrifying was that patterns resembling spider webs began to emerge continuously on the robust city walls. "Mr. Mayor, sir?" Exclamations rang out and loyal guards rushed towards Qin Gang. However, Qin Gang didn't even spare a glance at the people rushing towards him, and tightened his fist instead. Crack, crack. With crisp bone-cracking sounds, Qin Gang clenched his fist tighter and tighter. Then, with a deafening boom, a punch suddenly struck Gong Kai-feng's back, sending a terrifying shockwave in all directions. In a moment, everyone who was rushing towards Qin Gang were caught off guard and sent flipping through the air. However, this was only the beginning because right after that punch, a series of deafening thumps reverberated once again, as one punch after another, full of explosive force, struck the mayor of Crescent Moon City, slamming him into the depths of the city wall, much to the horror of countless humans. At a closer look, one could even see a huge gaping hole through his abdomen clearly being punched through. "I don't like violence." Raising his head slowly and wiping the blood off his hands, Qin Gang displayed a disdainful sneer like a rogue. The next moment, snap with a snap of his fingers, Qin Gang's cold voice echoed through the city, "Anyone who resists, kill them without mercy." Just as the drop of these words, howls and growls filled the air as countless 3-meter-tall giant green wolves swished out the depths of the mist. Their eyes glowed with a green intensity even greater than before, and their fur danced wildly along the wind. Then, in the horrified gaze of a superhuman, a storm wolf's claw tore through the air in front of him, sending a 3-meter-long wind blade right at him. "Is this real? This is not a nightmare, right?" In disbelief, the superhuman raised the weapon in his hand to block, but the next moment, with a crisp sound, his saber was cut into two by the wind blade. "We're far from the mutant beasts you've usually encountered." With a cold laugh, the giant green wolf, already drenched in blood, launched another charge. Meanwhile, at the center of Crescent Moon City, boom, 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 amidst the continuous tremors, crack continuously appeared in a huge square at the center of Crescent Moon City. Immediately after, with a loud boom, an enormous sinkhole appeared in the square, with spine-chilling shrill squeaks coming from deep within. Asterisk squeak squeak squeak, squeak squeak squeak. Asterisk amidst these extremely sharp squeaks, an endless number of mutant black rats began to rush out from the sinkhole, like black waves, spreading in all directions. However, what was terrifying was that these mutant black rats had black mist swirling around them, with some even accompanied by lightning streaks and flames burning in the depths of their eyes. This was the Rat Clan, the clan recognized as unbeatable in group battles in Misty Mountains. They were the true symbol of terror. Their individual combat strength wasn't that great, but their overwhelming numbers made even the strongest of the Transcendents feel fearful. However, this was not the end of their horror. Their true terror lay in the fact that the mutant rat clan of Misty Mountains was blessed with terrifying group ability. The more terrifying their king was, the more abilities the ordinary mutant rats would possess. For example, the black fog enveloping most of the mutant black rats at this moment was a manifestation of the darkness ability possessed by their king, Shady. This ability could mitigate some damage, significantly boost strength, and enhance speed. Now, just as the rat clan of Misty Mountains made an entrance, they engulfed almost half of the city. What was astonishing, however, was that these creatures seemed to receive some kind of command. They refrained from damaging buildings and most importantly, if left unprovoked, they did not attack. For instance, right now, an elderly woman holding a little girl standing amidst the sea of rats had their face filled with confusion and disbelief as they tremblingly raised their heads. This was because before their eyes, the flowing sea of black rats just passed by the two, displaying no intent to harm. Chapter 484, The Descent of the Divine Tree. At this moment, the entire Crescent Moon City was enveloped in dense mist, blocking everyone's sight, making it difficult to even tell east from west. Yet, what was even more terrifying were the screams and roars that echoed endlessly, as if the city was shrouded in a moment of despair. No! A scream abruptly stopped as a young man with a long spear slowly fell into a pool of blood. Beside him, a small black rat with a smooth and shiny coat, no larger than a fist, coldly glanced at the lifeless body, then darted off in another direction without a second thought. It wasn't just it, many more mutant black rats were continuously charging towards a distant direction. Their claws were so sharp that they could rip anyone's throat, and speed was so fast that it would leave anyone bewildered. Swift and lethal, these two words perfectly represented the mutant rat clan. However, what puzzled people was that not only did these creatures refrain from harming unarmed humans, but they also avoided entering homes. In other words, if one hid inside their home and didn't resist, these mutant black rats would simply ignore them. Yet, despite this, impulsive and self-proclaimed powerful superhumans emerged one by one. Kill them. Stop the rat tide. Roaring, a burly young man wielding a large cleaver rushed out from the street. Boom, a surge of spiritual energy erupted from him, kicking up a hurricane around him. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eyes, he was surrounded by a storm of spiritual energy. He was Stormblade, a remarkably talented and rare Tier 2 superhuman in Crescent Moon City. Now, witnessing the sea of black rats drowning the entire city, he decided to charge alone. He fiercely swung his cleaver as a formidable energy blade descended upon the rat tide, cutting through a street. If this fearsome energy blade really fell upon the rat tide, it would end up heavily injuring a lot of mutant rats if not killing them. As such, the powerful mutant beasts lurking within the rat tide finally made a move. Whir. Suddenly, a sharp buzz echoed through the air as the fearsome energy blade fired by Stormblade with all his strength stalled in midair, much to his astonishment. At a closer look, he found a tiny green figure standing not far away from his energy blade, wielding two large cleavers like claws, and eyes as sharp as a swordsman. This figure was none other than Green Mantis, a member of Misty Mountain's Assassin Division, and a rare Tier 2 Transcendent as well. Whir. Another grating buzz suddenly echoed as a streak of green cut through the air as the Green Mantis swiftly arrived before Stormblade. No words or shouts, Green Mantis only let his blades do the talking. The next moment, a sharp swishing sound echoed as Stormblade caught sight of a fearsome strike coming at him. However, in response, Stormblade just took a long deep breath as he raised his cleaver to defend himself. Immediately after, a deafening clash reverberated, sending shockwaves through the air. At the same time, the ground underneath Stormblack's feet cracked, as if it was unable to bear his weight. What a terrifying strike! Stormblade's heart skipped a beat, but the next moment he saw another strike unleashed from the side. The corners of his lips twitched slightly as he tightened his grip on the cleaver. He was nicknamed Stormblade because his blade was as swift as a storm. However, he never expected to see a mutant beast even faster than himself. Nevertheless, if it's a fight you want, a fight you'll get. Shouting, Stormblade wielded his blades with both hands. The next moment, bang bang bang, blade strikes that could not be captured by the naked eye covered the entire street, kicking up powerful gales with every strike. However, this kind of battle was not happening in just this corner of the city. In another corner of the city, a man with a sly appearance was also intercepted by a Tier 2 mutant beast. His opponent, on the other hand, happened to be an enormous spider, with its 8 legs adorned with purple patterns firmly rooted to the ground. As the man gazed at the spiderwebs that had turned an entire street into a white sea, the corners of the sly-looking man's lips couldn't help but twitch. Damn it, I'm in serious trouble, lamenting in his heart. This Tier 2 superhuman known as Skinny Monkey, known for his swift movements, found himself at a loss, because the spiderweb had blocked all of his movements. Meanwhile, unnoticed by anyone, the thick mist obscuring the sky slowly started gathering. Eventually, the mist interweaved silently in the depths of the clouds, forming a towering willow tree. Although it was made of mist, it was vivid and lifelike. Mist projection, it was yet another application of the ability, Mastery of Mist. By molding the mist into his form, it allowed Wuxia to project his consciousness into it. And now, glancing at the city engulfed in flames, Wuxia's expression remained indifferent. To him, while he could effortlessly suppress the entire city with minimal effort, he remained unsure of how many humans harboring sinister intentions might be lurking within such an occupied city. Rather than taking control of the city like this, it would be better to lure out all those who oppose the mutant beasts and then wipe them out in one fell swoop. It's almost time. Sensing the dwindling vitality of the entire city, Wuxia narrowed his eyes slightly. The next moment, boom. A surge of spiritual energy suddenly erupted as a terrifying pressure suddenly descended from the sky. Bang bang bang, one after another, countless humans and even mutant beasts were all pressed to the ground. At that moment, countless were left horrified as they looked up and laid eyes on a towering willow tree made of mist, hovering calmly in the air against the backdrop of the starry sky. I am the Lord of the Mist, a whisper rang in the air, yet it reverberated thunderously in their mind, causing countless humans' faces to turn pale. However, in that very instant, Wuxia's voice resonated once again in the void. We're taking over Crescent Moon City, those who surrender shall not be killed. Those who surrender shall not be killed. Suddenly, a sneer echoed through the air. Then, to the astonished gaze of Wuxia, a Tier 2 superhuman slowly propped up his body, withstanding the immense pressure, his eyes completely bloodshot. Mutant beasts, come one, come two, kill two. A low yet resonant voice as if squeezed through his clenched teeth, carrying a biting cold chill rang. His eyes were burning with flames of hatred, even fiercer than the flames. Another pitiful soul who loathes mutant beasts. Lamenting in helplessness, Wuxia could not help but shake his head. Such individuals cannot be allowed to live. It's not about right or wrong, it's just a difference in position. Moments later, a mist-formed branch gently swung as if brushing away dust. Yet, this gentle sway sent that superhuman flying into the ground with a thunderous boom, much to the shock of countless onlookers. In the aftermath, one could see a large crater several tens of meters wide centered around this individual. Everyone's back became drenched in cold sweat, their heart gripped with genuine fear at the sight of a Tier 2 superhuman crushed like an ant gulping nervously. Many people looked towards the towering willow tree of mist in the sky, a look of extreme fear on their faces. Chapter 485 Pioneer. As night fell upon Crescent Moon City, the flames of war that had been ravaging throughout the city had finally extinguished. Up against Wuxia, not to mention them, even China dared not be too presumptuous. Thus, the entire city chose to submit in the dead silence. However, to say they submitted was not entirely accurate. It was more like each superhuman had laid down their weapons for now. Meanwhile, Qin Gang, who was well aware of the inherent nature of humans, also cleverly picked some individuals from the lower strata of the city, who were worthy of nurturing. Throw them in prison. If anyone escapes, you know what will happen to you, Qin Gang ordered a man named Li Lang in a cold and stern voice. I know, Li Lang hurriedly nodded, assuring, rest assured sir, with me here not a single one of them will escape. That better be. Qin Gang nodded in satisfaction. This man called Li Lang had a bit of a sly appearance. Although he was only a Tier 1 superhuman in the face of Rat Tide, not to mention defend, he fled for his life at a moment's notice, albeit he failed to flee. Be that as it may, A person like this had his uses for the time being. At least a human like him, who was only interested in saving his own neck, cherished his life dearly. Of course, over the coming days, Qin Gang would raise his own team of trusted humans and truly take over the city. This was also the task entrusted to Qin Gang by Yu Ziyu. In other words, he was now the new mayor of Crescent Moon City. At this moment, as if remembering something, Qin Gang suddenly looked towards a nearby skyscraper, the most magnificent building in Crescent Moon City, reaching a height of 100 meters. However, what was somewhat surprising now was the vine-like outgrowth entwining this tall building. At a glance, the entire skyscraper seemed to be imbued with vitality. At this moment, only Qin Gang, as a child of the earth, could understand that a rootlet had spread beneath this tall building. This rootlet belonged to none other than Yu Ziyu. Yu Ziyu's roots were spread throughout every corner of Misty Mountains. And now, with the expansion of the mist, his rootlets also continued to spread, and this rootlet was the first to reach here. Exhaling deeply, Qin Gang started walking along a street, slowly approaching the skyscraper entwined with vines. Within the vicinity of Yu Ziyu, everything was bound to flourish and emit a strong vitality. And now, although just a section of rootlet had reached here, the rich vitality emanating from it had caused the surrounding vegetation to flourish. These vines were just a type of plant that had thrived under the influence of Yu Ziyu's rich vitality. Many more plants in the vicinity of the skyscraper had also flourished, adorning the surroundings with a thriving greenery. At a glance, Qin Gang felt as if he had returned to the forest. At this moment, as he slowly approached the skyscraper, the perfect integration of city and nature caught his sight. At this moment, every pillar had vines entwining around them, and even the interior of the skyscraper had gained a newfound vitality. "Master," calling out, Qin Gang bowed down reverently. "Come up." Suddenly, a voice rang in his ears, eliciting a joyous smile on Qin Gang's lips. The next moment, tap, 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 accompanied by crisp footsteps, Qin Gang arrived at the top floor of the skyscraper. Creak. Before he even knocked, the wooden door of what seemed like an office slowly opened. However, the moment the door opened, the silhouette of a young man caught Qin Gang's attention. The young man appeared to be around 14 to 15 years old, and had shoulder-length black hair. He happened to be standing quietly in front of windows extending from floor to ceiling, overlooking the entire city, giving off an inexplicable feeling. It seemed to be a mixture of loneliness and nostalgia. "Master?" Hearing the call from behind, Yu Ziyu, who had taken the form of a young man woven from countless rootlets extending from underneath the skyscraper, had a smile appear on his lips. "How is everything going?" "The entire city has been suppressed. Any human who resists has either been reduced to dust or thrown into the celestial prison," Qin Gang reported. At this point, Qin Gang assured in a loud and confident voice, "Master, please rest assured. Those thrown into the celestial prison won't be able to escape. The entire city is guarded by tens of thousands of members of the Rat Clan entrenched in the sewers, and there are even thousands of storm wolves outside Crescent Moon City. It could be said that the entire Crescent Moon City is like an impregnable fortress." After listening quietly to Qin Gang's report, Yu Ziyu nodded in satisfaction. He had trust in Qin Gang's capabilities. Of course, Qin Gang had downplayed it a bit. The entire Crescent Moon City was covered in a veil of mist, which was Yu Ziyu's eyes. As long as Yu Ziyu wished, he could easily perceive everything happening in the city. And this was the most terrifying aspect Yu Ziyu had gained after he had advanced to Tier 4. His psychic power, nearly reaching the level of materialization, could effortlessly envelop the entire city. With the mist acting as medium, Yu Ziyu's psychic force could extend several times further. However, doing this would result in a lot of information flooding into Yu Ziyu's mind at once, to the point that it could make him feel a little exhausted. "Crescent Moon City is in your hands. I trust you," Yu Ziyu responded. Then he raised his eyes and looked down at the city, continuing, "Do everything you can to gather scientists and spiritual energy researchers in the city as soon as possible. I need to establish several research institutes." Saying this, Yu Ziyu lifted a finger. Moments later, several drops of rich life essence floated up from Yu Ziyu's fingers. "Give these to them for research. Let them see if they can mass-produce it even if the effects are weak." Qin Gang was slightly taken aback, but he respectfully took the drops of life essence and stored them away without a moment of delay. Right at that very moment, Yu Ziyu's voice echoed in the office again. "Oh, and don't forget to collect humans' research on this era and even on spiritual energy. I want to take a look." "Understood, Master." Qin Gang nodded his acknowledgement, his eyes flickering with a hint of brilliance. Master indeed possesses great wisdom. He is supplementing his own needs using various achievements of humanity, a trait that can hardly be expected from other mutant beasts. And now, not only is Master doing this, but he is also planning to cultivate humans. And all of this, if I'm not mistaken, Master should be preparing for Tier 5 already? Tier 5 is a completely unknown realm. While humans have managed to theoretically analyze the terrifying nature Tier 4 to natural disasters, nothing is known about Tier 5. Master's actions are akin to a pioneer's, step by step, paving the way for future cultivation. After all, when no one knows the way ahead, someone must pave the path. And Master is such an existence. While most humans and mutant beasts are still striving to reach Tier 3, Master is already peering into that unknown realm. Chapter 486, Queen of Butterflies. Dream Butterfly. Meanwhile, deep in a certain valley. Ha! Exhaling a long deep breath, Ninetails silently appeared out of thin air. As for other beasts, they were all waiting outside, simply because while passing through this valley, Ninetails' keen sense of smell detected a faint, elusive scent. This was Ninetails. Had it been any other mutant beast, it might not necessarily detect it. As a descendant of the celestial fox lineage, Ninetails was particularly sensitive to certain scents. Someone's breaking through, and that too into Tier 3T, murmuring in her heart, a grin appeared at the corner of Ninetails' mouth. She had never expected to encounter such an opportunity, to actually come across a mutant beast breaking through to Tier 3. After all, everyone was at their weakest just after breaking through. Individuals like Wuxia, backed by their extremely deep and robust foundations, were the exceptions. Otherwise, a mutant beast's strength was completely sapped after a breakthrough. They were left with no strength, which was incredibly precarious for them. In other words, being found out during a breakthrough was an extremely dangerous matter. In the past, Wuxia used spirit stones to mask his aura in order to prevent his breakthrough being discovered. But now, many more methods have emerged to hide and suppress one's aura. Some mutant beasts could even seal their aura of breakthroughs with unique abilities, and that was what the mutant beast hidden deep within this valley was doing. Be that as it may, that wisp of its aura that had unintentionally leaked was caught by Ninetails' aura. In the desolate expanse of the mountain, a cold crescent moon resembling a hook hung in the sky, its light casting a faint glow upon the landscape, while twinkling stars dotted the heavens. In the depths of the night, the valley below appeared as a forsaken realm, shrouded in a melancholic tranquility. Yet, a closer look lifted the veil of desolation, revealing a hidden splendor. Amidst the cold shadows, vibrant clusters of flowers bloom, adorning the ground with bursts of color, while verdant trees stood tall. The entire valley was filled with the fragrance of flowers, and not just one kind of flower but countless kinds of flowers. Furthermore, these flowers were not ordinary flowers, but a wide variety of spirit flowers. Slightly squinting her eyes, Ninetails had already noticed that this valley was isolated by a barrier of light, firmly locking in the fragrance of the spirit flowers. No wonder it's difficult to detect these spirit flowers at the entrance. It turns out they're shielded by a barrier-like ability. But unfortunately, this kind of barrier could not only lock in the aura, but also acted as an alerting mechanism. Be that as it may, it seemed to be grossly ineffective against Ninetails. Simply because Ninetails, thanks to her celestial fox lineage, had a seldom used but excellent ability, Barrier Breaker. Barrier Breaker. The extremely sacred bloodline has endowed the claws of Ninetails with the power to tear apart all barriers. Ninetails had never known how to use this ability, but the moment she sensed the barrier of light, she raised her claw and swung it down, guided by her instincts. The next moment, with a crisp tearing sound, a small rift had been torn apart in the barrier. Through this rift, Ninetails finally entered this valley that appeared no different than a paradise on earth. 100 Flowers Valley. Murmuring, Ninetails deeply glanced at this valley, giving the valley a befitting name. 100 flowers were blooming together, each vying for attention in a dazzling display of natural splendor. Although there were no 5-color spirit flower or Fox Clan treasure grade spirit flowers, most of them were still extraordinary. There were some spirit flowers that even tempted Ninetails slightly. However, just at this moment, sensing something, Ninetails' gaze suddenly shifted towards the depths of the valley. In the ensuing moment, Ninetails' gaze, filled with astonishment, fixed upon a butterfly gracefully hovering above a huge spirit flower that resembled much like lotus. This was no ordinary butterfly. Each of its forewings bore a curved band of golden-green color emitting a radiant glow, while the central part of the hind wings boasted several golden yellow mottles, resembling stars scattered across the sky. Along the posterior edge, crescent-shaped golden yellow patches dotted the wings, while the hind wings tapered into tail-like slender protrusions, culminating in a small section of gold that emitted a golden light, gradually fading into the distance. At first glance, it resembled a glamorous noblewoman, with a graceful posture, magnificence, and nobility. Golden Kaiserhind, Nine Tails murmured, gazing at this mutant butterfly with renewed interest. Under the intentional guidance of the divine tree, Nine Tails was fond of reading books and was familiar with some of the pictures of certain mutant beasts compiled by humans. The Golden Kaiserhind was one of the creatures recorded in those pictures. However, this particular species of spirit butterfly was incredible, because even before the era of transcendence, the Golden Kaiserhind was known as the Queen of Butterflies, ranking first among the world's 8 most precious butterflies, and was also renowned as the dream butterfly and a living fossil. Its many titles were a testament of its sheer rarity and preciousness of this butterfly. And now, this butterfly had not only transformed into a spirit butterfly but was also making a breakthrough towards Tier 3. My luck seems to be unusually good. Speaking to herself, Nine Tails didn't know whether to rejoice or to wryly smile. Rejoice, naturally, because she had discovered a spirit butterfly making a breakthrough towards Tier 3, but wryly smile because if Nine Tails disturbed her breakthrough, it would undoubtedly forge a deadly feud, which would not end until one of them was dead. And this conflicted with the purpose of Nine Tails' visit. After all, under the orders of the divine tree, Nine Tails was here this time to subdue more mutant beasts. The more precious they were, the better. The Golden Kaiserhind, also known as the Queen of Butterflies and Dream Butterfly, was naturally on the list of creatures Nine Tails intended to subdue. Heaving a deep breath, Nine Tails came to a decision. Slowly, she withdrew backward until reaching the edge of the barrier of light surrounding the valley, where she then lay down, choosing to silently observe. And shortly after that, boom, the Golden Kaiserhind, hovering above the flower, suddenly flapped its wings, kicking up a fearsome gale that swept through the entire valley. No wonder her breakthrough wasn't too astonishing. She actually broke through by borrowing the spiritual energy of the 100 flowers. Nine Tails murmured to herself, amazed by the methods of the Golden Kaiserhind. The 100 flowers, all were spirit flowers. The spiritual energy they emanated was naturally incomparable to ordinary spiritual energy. When other mutant beasts broke through, they needed to plunder the spiritual energy of a vast area, which resulted in astonishing phenomena. But this spirit butterfly, by using the spiritual energy of the 100 flowers, kept the commotion caused by her breakthrough to a minimum. This showed her ingenious means. Visible to the naked eye, strands of prismatic spiritual energy started continuously rising from the flowers. In just a few breaths, 100 strands of pure spiritual energy gathered into a storm, flowing into the Golden Kaiserhind. The golden glow around her became even more dazzling, and the golden specks trailing from her tail became even more intense. Faintly, Nine Tails could no longer discern the figure of the Golden Kaiserhind. Instead, before her eyes, there was a dazzling ball of light, resembling a miniature sun, flickering deep within the valley. After an unknown period of time, a sharp cry rang in the valley, filled with joy of breaking through. Then, to the astonished gaze of Nine Tails, there emerged a butterfly as large as a basketball, enveloped in a prismatic, dreamlike glow. Every time she flapped her wings, it sent ripples through the air, distorting the air. Chapter 487, Killer Bee. A mutant spirit butterfly, Nine Tails murmured to herself. Looking at the golden butterfly that resembled a mini-sun, she could not help but squint her eyes, simply because she actually sensed a faint threat from her. Boom, as the spirit butterfly flapped her wings, countless golden specks of lights scattered from her like sunlight, casting a faint veil over her figure. And right at that very moment, Nine Tails' red coat also began to flutter, accompanied by deep red flames emerging from the depths of her eyes. Yip! With a fox howl, a surge of spiritual energy erupted from Nine Tails. However, just at this moment something unexpected happened. High up in the sky, the blurry figure of the spirit butterfly suddenly flapped her wings, generating a fearsome gale, causing Nine Tails' pupils to shrink. Because, in that very moment, the spirit butterfly actually seemed to merge into space, becoming illusory, much to Nine Tails' astonishment. What's this? Astounded, Nine Tails' face became even more serious. This is my ability, Dream, which allows me to blend in with space. explaining. The spirit butterfly hovering in the air flapped her wings again, and thanked in gratitude, "Thank you." This immediately brought a frown on Ninetail's face and she couldn't help but ask, "Why are you thanking me?" "If you had attacked me in my moment of weakness, I would have been unable to resist," explaining in a gentle voice. The spirit butterfly looked towards a corner of the valley and offered, smiling, "As a reward, you are free to pick the spirit flowers in this valley." "Is that so?" Curling her lips slightly, Ninetails suppressed her spiritual pressure and slowly stood up, earnestly introducing herself. "I come from Misty Mountains." As soon as she dropped these words, the spirit butterfly momentarily froze. Misty Mountains, these words were not something that could be lightly mentioned. It might not be that serious in the human world, but in the world of mutant beasts, these words were completely forbidden. In the world of mutant beasts, strength determined everything. However, the stronger one was, the more they understood the horror of Misty Mountains. Several days ago, that terrifying pressure from UZU shook half the continent. Even now, the spirit butterfly couldn't help but shudder every time she recalled it. And if not for the stimulation brought by that terrifying pressure, she would never have made a breakthrough now. Che. The spirit butterfly heaved a long, deep breath, but before she could respond, a voice rang in her ear. "I am here on behalf of the Lord of the Mist, Divine Tree, specifically to invite you to join Misty Mountains." Ah. Momentarily startled, the spirit butterfly failed to react immediately. After waiting for a moment and seeing the expectant look in Ninetail's eyes, she smiled and stated, "It would be my pleasure." Saying so, the spirit butterfly flapped her wings, and silently landed on Ninetail's head. "Fantastic." Satisfied, Ninetail smiled. And this was the current deterrent of Misty Mountains. Apart from the mutant beasts that had formed a small group, any mutant beast, once heard Misty Mountain's name, would pause for a moment, and then choose to join after some consideration. It was in the nature of mutant beasts to attach themselves to the strong. And immensely powerful entities like Divine Tree were even more worthy of being followed by a majority of mutant beasts. Up to now, in addition to this spirit butterfly that has just become a Tier 3 Transcendent, many other mutant beasts with decent strength had chosen to join Misty Mountains. Among them there were 3 that were most noteworthy. One was the continuously mutating bee, who had already stepped into Tier 2, known as the Killer Bee. It was as fast as lightning, moving instantaneously. In terms of explosive speed, it even surpassed the green mantis. And what was even more terrifying was its sting, which was quite deadly. Even Bull Demon cried out in agony when stung by it. It was worth noting that among the great beasts, Bull Demon was particularly famous for his defense and staunch will. However, even with such resilience, after being stung by this killer bee, he couldn't help but cry out in pain. It stood as a testament of how terrifying the killer bee's offense was. Apart from the killer bee was a black cat who had taken on human form. She was a natural assassin, able to blend into the shadows. And even more terrifying was that seemed to be able to teleport. As for the specifics, even Ninetails was not too clear about. All she knew was that when Bull Demon brought her back, she was so severely injured that she fell into a coma. And naturally, the third was this spirit butterfly. Leaving aside everything else, just the fact that she had advanced to Tier 3 was enough to explain everything. In this world, the strong were respected, and a spirit butterfly at Tier 3 had already earned the respect of Ninetails. This era is really blessed with more and more terrifying mutant beasts. A smile flashed on Ninetails' face. Ninetails didn't mind the spirit butterfly landing on her head, she just lifted her feet instead, and slowly started making her way towards the outside of the valley. Before long, much to the astonishment of the spirit butterfly, one powerful mutant beast after another entered her sight. There was the humanoid Bull Demon carrying a dreadful axe on his back, resembling a demon straight from hell. There was also a chubby figure wearing a bamboo hat, shrouded in a veil of mystery. Of course, the most eye-catching one was still the giant elephant in the distance, resembling a small mountain dragging many goods. So, this is the fighting force of Misty Mountains? The spirit butterfly marveled in her mind, shocked. Mutant beasts as strong as Bull Demon and Brewmaster could easily rule over an area just by showing their faces, yet now she found them in groups, much to her surprise. The spirit butterfly was caught speechless, silently mourning for their enemies for a few seconds. Encountering them is nothing short of a tragedy. Fortunately, I've wisely joined them. Another thing that was worth mentioning was that it was not just Ninetails who had advanced to Tier 3. Even old Ninth, Brewmaster had silently advanced to Tier 3 in the past few days. However, he had always maintained a low-key attitude, choosing to advance in some deep recess of a spirit stone mine. As such, apart from Nine Tails who guarded him, no other mutant beasts knew about it. Of course, another person had joined the list now, the spirit butterfly. While she was a Tier 3 transcendent, she was not adept at combat, but she did excel in other aspects. She could easily perceive how terrifying the chubby figure wearing a bamboo hat not far away was. Chapter 488, The Plan of Taking Root in Space. Meanwhile, deep within Misty Mountains, Ruhar, a dragon's roar reverberated as a dreadful pressure, belonging solely to the apex predator in the food chain, swept across the mountains. Looking up, countless mutant beasts were taken aback at the sight of a dragon, surrounded by purple electric arcs, hovering in the depths of the clouds. A living and breathing dragon. It was young, but its dragon horns, its pair of wings that spanned over 10 meters, and its tails, swaying time to time releasing purple arcs, told the tales of its majesty loud and clear. And this was the most mysterious great beast of Misty Mountains. It was also known as the Purple Dragon, the Lightning Dragon, because whenever it traveled, it was accompanied by clouds and mist, with purple electric lights trailing behind. At this moment, Ruhar, a dragon's roar echoed across the sky as Little Tenth turned into a purple streak of lightning plunging downward. Boom, a deafening crash followed as the ground quaked for kilometers, kicking up a cloud of dust. Looking towards the crash, one would also find a crater several tens of meters deep, which was quite surprising. After all, Little Tenth had just reached Tier 1, and yet just a dive was so strong that countless mutant beasts broke into a cold sweat. However, right at that very moment, a neigh resembling that of a warhorse echoed through the sky as a strange beast in black coat, with a single horn on its head, rushed out from the cloud of dust. It was galloping in the air, sending ripples through the air with each step. It kept accelerating, galloping faster and faster, until it transformed into a black streak. If one paid close attention to it, they would notice a faint electric glow entwining around its horn. Pierce it! Growling, the dream beast launched the most terrifying charge towards Little Tenth. Its speed was akin to a shooting star, causing even some Tier 2 mutant beasts to narrow their eyes. The dream beast was the newest member to Misty Mountains with mysterious origins. Although it has just broken through to Tier 2, it was unfathomable to gauge its depth. Now, as it executed a full-force charge, raising such a fearsome storm that even the onlookers in the distance were almost knocked off their feet, it became evident how terrifying this creature was. However, such a terrifying creature was actually exerting its full strength against Little Tenth, who was just a Tier 1 transcendent but a legendary existence. A lightning dragon. Gulp, swallowing their saliva in nervousness, countless mutant beasts seemed to understand why Little Tenth, who had only become a Tier 1 transcendent, was recognized as the 10th great beast by the divine tree even before birth. Meanwhile, at the sight of the rapidly approaching black streak, followed by an enormous storm, Little Tenth took a long deep breath before grinning. The next moment, roar! It gave out a roar as a dark purplish glow emerged from its throat, growing intenser by the moment. Hee hee, you dare to come? Even while in a state of roaring, Little Tenth still via his psychic power, smirked playfully. Why wouldn't I dare? With a light laughter, the dream beast also raised its head and neighed. And just in the next moment, with a deafening roar, a water bucket-thick bolt of lightning, seemingly liquefied, tore through the air, heading straight towards the dream beast. However, with another thunderous clap, in the shocked gazes of countless mutant beasts, the thick purple lightning bolt momentarily came to a halt. At a closer inspection, it was revealed to be splitting apart, and the thing tearing it apart was a horn emitting a blackish glow. Then an even louder and more majestic roar from the dragon shook the sky, while the purple lightning beam tore through everything in its path, seemingly infused with an otherworldly power. Boom, followed by a thunderous boom, the purple lightning beam ripped a kilometer-long trench in the forest. I'm no match for you in terms of explosive power. Amidst a voice filled with helplessness, a flicker flashed in the air. Immediately after, a strange beast, resembling a warhorse but with a single horn, emerged out of thin air. The dream beast was capable of stepping into the illusion and reality. In the moment when Little Tenth's dragon breath engulfed it, it opened a rift in space and entered a mysterious space, which even Uzu couldn't fully comprehend, in order to evade the terrifying power of the dragon breath. Humph, I'm a lightning dragon. Declaring in a proud voice, Little Tenth walked his way from a distance, sweating profusely. He had no choice but to walk, rather even walking was somewhat difficult for Little Tenth, let alone flying. Challenging someone a tier above was no joke. Even though he was a member of a race that only existed in myths and legends, he still had to be on his toes when up against a Tier 2 mutant beast. Legendary races demonstrated their overwhelming strength not in their youth, but in their adulthood. When they grow into adolescents or even adults, they will demonstrate their fearsome strength that could overpower their peers. At this moment he was still weak. It was difficult for him to truly unleash the power of the legendary dragons. Not to mention the fact that the Dream Beast itself was not an ordinary Tier 2 Transcendent. If it were an ordinary Tier 2 Transcendent, with little tense strength, perhaps his terrifying dragon breath could completely engulf it. But the Dream Beast was different. It could travel between illusion and reality, which made it difficult to counter. If it weren't for its weakness in close combat, its potential would definitely raise a few points in Yuziu's mind. And just at that moment, a voice suddenly rang in the air, "Come back." "Yes, master," responding in unison, both the Dream Beast and Little Tenth hurried towards the depths of Misty Mountains. Shortly after, beneath a majestic willow tree that was obscuring the sky and covering the moon, the Dream Beast and Little Tenth bowed respectfully. Not far from them, countless roots slowly interwoven into a figure of a young man. "Not bad." Satisfied, Yuziu calmly praised. Despite no one coming out as a winner, Yuziu still managed to see a glimpse of the strength of both the Dream Beast and Little Tenth. There was no denying the sheer power of the Dream Beast with mysterious origins and Little Tenth who possessed a powerful bloodline, enough to consider them invincible amongst their peers of the same tier. Furthermore, they would only become even more terrifying as they advanced further. In fact, it could be said that thanks to his bloodline, Little Tenth becoming a Tier 4 Transcendent was set in stone. It was just that he would require a long time for him to reach Tier 4. Speaking of length of time, it was not really that long. According to Yuziu's estimate, it was probably just a few decades. A few decades may not seem long, especially for mutant beasts with lifespans of several hundred years. However, it had only been less than 5 years since the advent of the era of transcendence. At the thought of this, all kinds of emotions surged in Yuziu's mind, and he couldn't help but mourn for Little Tenth for 3 seconds. Little Tenth is truly born in the wrong era. In another era he would have enough time to grow, but in this crazy era, it was simply not possible. At least, given the speed at which most mutant beasts are evolving nowadays, there really won't be much time for Little Tenth to evolve. As for the Dream Beast, given his mysterious origins and remarkable talent, along with his ability to travel between the illusion and reality, he is more than able to ensure his survival, despite his lacking offensive abilities. He is worth cultivating. With these thoughts in mind, Yuziu's gaze couldn't help but flicker, looking at the Dream Beast. Leaving aside other factors, just the mysterious space the Dream Beast was connected to made Yuziu a little curious. If possible, Yuziu really wanted to go in and explore. After all, it was time for him to consider how to take root in space. Although the Earth was good for Yuziu, it was ultimately a constraint. Compared to this, space was a very good choice. At least, space was everywhere. Chapter 489, White Fox of Green Hill. While Yuziu pondered on how to establish roots in the void, a voice suddenly rang in his ear. "Master, White Fox is requesting an audience." "White Fox." Murmuring softly, Yuziu glanced at Aurora already rooted on his body. Aurora still liked to stay close to Yuziu, which made sense. Given Yuziu's current strength, the spiritual energy in his vicinity was several times purer than the surroundings. What was even more terrifying was that Yuziu was constantly releasing abundant vitality in the air unintentionally, which happened to be immensely beneficial to mutant beasts and even Aurora. Thus, Aurora was reluctant to part with Yuziu. At this moment, hearing Aurora's voice, Yuziu also remembered that White Fox was the second leader of the Fox clan of Green Hill. However, he had never had an audience with her since she joined Misty Mountains. After all, things were different from before. With Yuziu's status and strength, apart from some core members, all other mutant beasts and even humans could only watch from afar. Let alone getting close to Yuziu, their movements were restricted. They were moved to a corner deep underground in Misty Mountains like a prison. Yuziu called it the prison cave. In this place, apart from the apex superhuman brought back by Yuziu last time like Elder Qin, many powerful transcendents who were unwilling to surrender or even hated Misty Mountains were awaiting Yuziu's judgment. However, Yuziu had been immersed in cultivation recently and didn't have much time to deal with them. Apart from the prison cave, there were many other mysterious places in Misty Mountains. For example, the Bamboo Pavilion. It was the place where spirit bamboos were cultivated. It was managed by Lung Feng and his sister. It was an extremely picturesque place, like a paradise on earth. And now, the bamboo pavilion had an additional task, which was to welcome guests. Creatures like White Fox, who came from afar, had always been staying in the bamboo pavilion. If they wanted to go elsewhere, they would be accompanied by a member of the mouse clan all the time, restricting their movements to a certain extent. Let her come. Yuziyu granted the permission with a smile, while also dismissing Little Tenth and the Dream Beast. As their cultivation was on the right track, they didn't need too much guidance from Yuziyu. Creatures like them relied more on themselves. Shortly after they departed, tap, 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 with heavy footsteps, a white figure slowly emerged from the thick fog. She had beautiful white fur that was fluttering in the wind. Her limbs were slender yet strong. Her fox eyes were captivating, seemingly seductive and yet not at the same time, flowing with clarity. "Greetings, divine tree," White Fox greeted in a soft voice, which surprisingly carried a hint of timidity. She even buried her head down, not daring to lift it up. "And," nodding his acknowledgement, Yuziyu courteously remarked with a smile, "you won't regret your decision of joining Misty Mountains." While speaking, Yuziyu snapped one of his branches as a drop of life essence flew out, shooting towards White Fox. The next moment, White Fox's body shook violently, and then, to her disbelief, her spiritual energy, which had been growing at a tortoise-like pace, started soaring at a rate visible to the naked eye. Furthermore, even her white as snow fur also began to grow. "What's going on?" White Fox cried in a voice tinged with disbelief and a hint of astonishment. "Life essence," giving a short reply. Yuziyu glanced at White Fox and, noticing the disbelief still apparent in her eyes, explained, "Although I don't know where you obtained knowledge of life essence from, whatever you have tried must have been extremely diluted, making its effects subpar." At this point, Yuziyu momentarily paused, looking deeply at White Fox, who was glowing green all over. This was a sign that she couldn't fully absorb the life essence. Now Yuziyu had reached the natural disaster class. His strength had undergone earth-shaking changes, and as such, his treasure, life essence, had also undergone a qualitative transformation. Let alone White Fox, who was only a Tier 2 transcendent, even if she were to advance to Tier 3, it would be difficult for her to completely digest Yuziyu's life essence before her strength stabilized. And all this was because Yuziyu's life essence could be classified as Tier 4 spirit essence, which not only could bring someone back from the jaws of death, but could grow flesh on bones. With just a drop of this life essence, an ordinary human could instantly break through to the Tier 1. Of course, the premise for all this was that the human could bear it. According to Yuziyu's estimate, it would already be good if the human didn't explode and die without breaking through. Everything in the world has its own checks and balances. There was no such thing as getting something for nothing. If one wanted to completely absorb Yuziyu's life essence, they must endure the pain of being cleansed by it. And now, for the first time in her life, White Fox felt a kind of pain that she would not forget for her entire life. Howl! Suddenly, a tragic scream full of pain and sorrow echoed in North Canyon as White Fox's body grew several times bigger in Yuziyu's calm gaze. At this moment, if one could look through Yuziyu's perspective, they would see the surging vitality of the life essence assaulting every inch of White Fox's body like a tsunami. Not just her body, even her bone marrow. It wasn't known how long it had passed, but the tragic screams gradually ceased. At this moment, if one were to look at White Fox again, they would find her slightly different from before. Her fur was denser, mingled with strands of crimson. The original delicate White Fox had gained a bit of wildness, and a hint of daunting sharpness. "Thank you, Master." Expressing her gratitude in a very sincere tone, White Fox looked towards the figure standing quietly not far away in front of the towering tree, her expression filled with an indescribable sense of respect. Just a drop of life essence had brought earth-shaking changes in her, like the Creator. Such means had left White Fox in awe. The current White Fox even had the confidence to deal with 3 to 4 of her past self from half an hour ago. It stood as a testament of how amazing her improvement was. With this in mind, White Fox became even more grateful and offered, "Master, this time when we came to Misty Mountains, our Green Hills Fox clan also prepared a gift for you." While speaking, White Fox presented a spirit herb. Chapter 490 Lucky Spirit Grass. Yuziyu was slightly taken aback by what the spirit herb offered him. He focused his gaze as the information about the strange herb held in White Fox's mouth presented before him. Lucky Spirit Grass. It has 9 leaves, each leaf has 9 rings, 81 rings in total. If all 81 rings are gathered in one person, they would be blessed with fortune, granting them with unimaginable divine ability. After going through its details, a rare expression of regret appeared on Yu's face. Indeed, this spirit herb could rival the 5-colored spirit flower, Aurora. Gathering its 81 rings would grant one a blessing, endowing its target with incredible divine ability. Such a terrifying ability was worthy of the grade of spirit herb. However, what Yu found regrettable was that this lucky spirit grass was missing 4 rings. With this in mind, Yu looked thoughtfully at White Fox. If I'm not mistaken, White Fox must have inadvertently nibbled on part of the herb. In this era of transcendence, not only mutant beasts but even spirit herbs and flowers were mysterious. No one knows the extent of their powers, let alone how to use them. Everything had to be constantly explored in the darkness. This lucky spirit grass happened to be just like the legendary fruit of life. According to legend, the fruit of life falls when it encounters gold, withers when it encounters wood, melts when it encounters water, scorches when it encounters fire, and enters when it encounters earth. To harvest it, it must be touched with an object made of metal. Although this lucky spirit grass didn't have so many taboos, it still had one. If it couldn't be fully consumed unless whole. Otherwise, its efficacy would greatly diminish, or even turn into an ordinary spirit herb. Not a single one of the 81 rings could be missing. With this in mind, Yu cast a deep glance at White Fox once again. The next moment, in the enlightened gaze of Yu, he found 4 streams of energy swirling within the depths of White Fox's body. Yu heaved a sigh, but he didn't blame her. Ignorance was not a crime. Had White Fox known about the consequence of consuming part of this herb, she would not have done so. Unfortunately, except for Yu, everyone else could only fumble about in the dark when it came to the power and usage of spirit herbs and flowers. As for White Fox, the lucky spirit grass was a treasure of the Fox clan of Green Hill. It was well within reason for her to have an urge to have a taste out of curiosity every now and then. If she knew the consequences were so severe, she wouldn't have dared to nibble on it, no matter how much courage she had. After all, tasting the treasure was one thing, but deceiving Yu was another matter. If Yu got angry, not to mention White Fox, the entire Green Hills Fox clan wouldn't be able to bear it. This is not my opportunity to take. In a somewhat helpless tone, Yu waved his hand, sending the spirit herb whirling back to White Fox, much to her astonishment. Divine tree, why? Voicing her bewilderment, a perplexed look took over White Fox's face. One might even say fearful. However, at this moment, a gentle voice suddenly rang in her mind, "Eat it." At the drop of these words, White Fox felt her mouth opening wide. Out of her control, a warm stream flowing into her body, as if the spirit herb melted in her mouth. At this moment, in Yu's perspective, he could see countless mysterious streams of energy intertwining within the depths of White Fox's body. Faintly, the entire process carried an indescribable sense of mystery, seemingly evolving. An apex-order divine ability. Yu's curiosity was immediately piqued. What kind of divine ability could it be to be designated as strongest? However, at present, this divine ability was still evolving in some corner of White Fox's body. According to Yu's speculation, this apex-order divine ability would only come into the world when White Fox had advanced to Tier 3. That would be the best chance for Yu to glimpse into it. For now, it is better to wait quietly. With this in mind, Yu calmly stated, "This spirit herb is not fated to be with me. Since you have the fate, make best use of it." Yu's declaration took White Fox by surprise. However, after a moment, as if sensing something, she suddenly cast a grateful glance at Yu. Although Yu didn't say anything or explained it to her, she vaguely felt that the divine tree had bestowed her a tremendous opportunity. "Thank you, divine tree." Expressing her deep gratitude once again, White Fox slowly took her leave. However, at this moment, what White Fox didn't notice was the rare anticipation in Yu's gaze as he watched her departing figure. Divine abilities were rare to come by, much less an apex-order divine ability. According to Yu's speculation, it should be no less inferior to Aurora's innate talent, instant. And surprisingly, such a terrifying divine ability was slowly evolving right under his nose. It was quite apparent how big of an opportunity this was for Yu. If he managed to comprehend even a fraction of it, it would significantly boost Yu's chances of breaking through to higher tiers. With this in mind, Yu attached a wisp of his consciousness to a root buried deep underground, which slowly started wriggling as if imbued with life. Then, in just a few breaths, it followed the departing figure of White Fox. Given Yu's current strength, Just a wisp of his consciousness following White Fox put every single movement of her under Yuziu's complete grasp. If necessary, his consciousness could directly manifest at his will. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, several days had passed. During these days, the long-absent trio Little Fifth, Golden Ant, Old Sixth, Thorns and Old Seventh, Titan returned. "Greetings, Master." In unison, the shiny and scaly Golden Ant, the graceful Thorns, and the towering Titan all looked fervently towards the towering tree not far away. "You're back." With a smile, Yuziu woke up from his cultivation, coming back to his senses. However, at this moment, as if noticing something, Yuziu looked at the trio with a hint of surprise. Compared to the last time he saw them, their aura had evidently become a lot stronger. Golden Ant was only one step away from reaching Tier 3. As for Thorns and Titans, they too were not far behind. Thorns had already reached 3rd Order Tier 2, while Titan, relying on his terrifying physique, should have the formidable combat power of a 4th Order Tier 2. In other words, the strength of these three had significantly improved. As expected, combat is the best choice for you guys. Deeply marveling, Yuziu also gained some insight. Chapter 491, Crusade on the Continents. Combat might not be effective in improving the strength of other mutant beasts, but for creatures like Golden Ant, Thorns, Titan, and Flathead, battle was the fastest way to grow. Bathing in blood, fighting on the edge of life and death. They were the only way to awaken the dormant potential in their bodies. They were born for battle, they were true warriors. Such mutant beasts were not suitable for captivity, let alone for Yuziu to shelter them. They belonged to the vast battlefield, and what Yuziu could do for them was to relieve them of their worries out of the battlefield. With this in mind, Yuziu calmly stated, "The day you left, although I was cultivating, my consciousness has been paying attention to everything happening around me. And now you have proven your words with actions." At this point, Yuziu also affirmed, "You do indeed belong on the battlefield." "Master," calling out, Golden Ant clenched his fists tightly. At this moment, if one were to look closely at Golden Ant, they would surely notice that his golden scales were stained with a subtle sheen of dark red. It was the residue of blood, a mark especially left when the blood in his body boiled and turned into mist every time he used Strength Boost. However, this terrifying dark red sheen did not degrade Golden Ant's aloof demeanor. Instead, it added a touch of chilling coldness to it. Especially now, when Golden Ant was exuding a terrifying aura. Even Yuziu couldn't help but glance at Golden Ant a few times. According to Yuziu's rough estimate, his true combat strength should have reached the 4th Order of Tier 2, also designated as the Apex Order. Furthermore, it might be even stronger than the average 4th Order Tier 2 Transcendence. It was all because Golden Ant's body had gradually adapted to his unique ability, Strength Boost. Now he could withstand even more terrifying loads. He had even touched the threshold of the 4th stage. 4th stage, it might sound simple, but it held an indescribable terror. After all, Golden Ant's strength far exceeded that of his peers. And thanks to continuous multiplication, he could now amplify his original terrifying strength by 4 times. Golden Ant now possessed such terrifying power that let alone his peers, even Tier 3 mutant beasts who were good at defense, had to think twice when facing him. If they got punched by him, they would lose more than just a piece of flesh. This was the true terror of Golden Ant. Smiling, Yuziu looked at Golden Ant with a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. This little fella has really grown up. Yuziu earnestly declared, "In the future I will not restrict your freedom." Speaking of this, Yuziu glanced at the other mutant beasts whose eyes were also burning with passion and continued, "And even you guys, if you want to leave Misty Mountains, fight and bathe in blood, I will not stop you." However, at this point Yuziu's tone turned colder as he added, "But as a consequence, even if you die fighting, I will not lift a finger." The mutant beasts were slightly taken aback by this revelation and glanced at each other. Moments later, as if understanding something, Golden Ant suddenly stepped out from the group and affirmed, "Master, please believe us, we will definitely not bring disgrace to Misty Mountain's name." His declaration seemed to have struck a chord as voices echoed one after another, with Titan and Flathead being the most excited. "Master, please believe us, we will definitely not bring disgrace to Misty Mountain's name." "Ah." Yuziu nodded his acknowledgement, a bit satisfied with their attitude. He believed that this was for the best. If fighting could help them grow, then he could tolerate some inevitable sacrifices. Be that as it may, he hoped that these sacrifices were limited to a small number. At this moment, as if thinking of something, Golden Ant suddenly shouted loudly, "Master, Please allow me to cross the continent and expand the territory of Misty Mountains. Little Fifth? Muttering, Yuziyu cast a complex gaze at Golden Ant. He naturally understood why Golden Ant made this choice. It would be really hard to engage in real battles on this continent. Yuziyu was so strong that the entire continent already revered him. Given such an entity backing him, the other mutant beasts would rather flee, let alone making a move on Golden Ant outside. When humans and mutant beasts would come to know that he was the fifth great beast of Misty Mountains, they would ultimately choose to retreat. At least on the surface, very few humans and mutant beasts would dare to offend Misty Mountains. However, it was different on another continent. Although Yuziyu was terrifying, his reputation had not yet reached the point of intimidating the entire world. If Golden Ant crossed the ocean and waged battles on other continents, he would definitely have to walk over mountains of corpses and seas of blood. That would be the real test for him. Except this would be a dangerous choice. Yuziyu sighed in his heart, but he didn't stop Golden Ant. Little Fifth is extremely stubborn by nature. Since he is proposing this, he has already made up his mind. If Yuziyu stopped him, Golden Ant would definitely stay on this continent out of respect for him. However, the already ignited fire of battle in his eyes would inevitably grow weak. Heaving a sigh, Yuziyu declared with a nod, I've already granted you freedom, you can do whatever you like. Thank you, Master. Gritting his teeth, the usually arrogant Golden Ant knelt down and lowered his proud head to the ground. This was his choice, and it was not only for his sake but also for Yuziyu's sake. Bravery and belligerence was in his nature. His path was destined to be a bloody one. Not to mention making enemies from around the world, even a couple of mountains would not be enough to bury those who would die under his fists. His killing would definitely provoke public outrage. If he stayed on this continent, the entire Misty Mountain would bear the infamy because of him, which was something Golden Ant definitely didn't want to see. For this reason, leaving was Golden Ant's inevitable choice. However, it wasn't a bad choice either. The world had 7 continents, and there was no end to those that bore the title kings. There were too many places in this vast world to conquer. And he, Golden Ant, bearing the title fifth great beast of Misty Mountains, would walk through one unfamiliar continent after another. While he couldn't guarantee anything, he dared to promise that even if he fought down to his last bit of strength, to the last drop of blood, he would not disgrace the name of Misty Mountains. Chapter 492 Shattering Light in the Sky. Since Golden Ant had made up his mind, Yuziyu also chose to remain silent. Fledgling would eventually have to leave the nest. Now that Golden Ant had grown, Yuziyu naturally wouldn't stop him. However, just then, a long howl suddenly echoed across the sky. Countless mutant beasts immediately looked towards the sound, and spotted billowing waves of flames surging over at the horizon. The flames were dark red in color, as if they came straight from hell, dyeing the world in a deep crimson hue. Howl, another gentle howl resounded as a huge red fox, covered in deep red flames, emerged from the sea of fire. She had a stunningly beautiful coat. Her eyes, as bright as rubies, shone like stars in the night sky. However, that wasn't the most eye-catching thing. The most eye-catching things were the 4 enormously long tails swaying behind her, wrapped in deep red flames. Upon closer inspection, the countless flames in the sky seemed to be gushing out from her 4 tails. The Flame Monarch, 9 tails, an existence in Misty Mountains that couldn't be ignored. She was another major figure of Misty Mountains after the Divine Tree in Ling Air. Now she has finally returned. Howl, 9 tails gave out another howl, shaking the sky. At the same time, amidst her howl, a basketball-sized butterfly, surrounded by a golden glow, flew out from 9 tails' head. Every time she flapped her wings, dazzling golden light cascaded down like waves. At this moment, whether it was an illusion or something else, countless mutant beasts seemingly saw an angel. An angel descending from the sky, illuminating the world. It was none other than the spirit butterfly who could weave the dreams. "Welcome to Misty Mountains," a faint voice echoed in the sky. Amidst the bewildered gazes of countless mutant beasts, a black serpent-like branch extended towards the spirit butterfly, illuminating the sky. "Divine Tree," muttering, the golden butterfly gently landed on the branch extended by Yuziyu amidst the golden light. It immediately brought a smile to Yuziyu's lips. He was satisfied with her subtlety, at least she didn't make him lose face. Naturally, since she was strong, Yuziyu would also give the appropriate amount of respect. The next moment, spiritual energy surged with a deafening roar as glowing specks of green rose from the ground. And with golden specks raining down from the sky, against the backdrop of the sea of flames, a picturesque sight was painted. Such a magnificent scene, not to mention ordinary mutant beasts, even major figures like Ninetales couldn't help but squint their eyes in marvel. The welcoming ceremony was grand and absolutely necessary. After all, the spirit butterfly was a Tier 3 transcendent. A creature of that level, even considering the entire continent, could be considered a peak powerhouse. After all, most of the 10 monstrosities that currently terrified the continent were only Tier 2s. Of course, strength was just a partial factor in designating them as monstrosities. The prime factor that played the biggest role was the harm they had caused to humans. If the spirit butterfly wiped out several human cities, she too would join the ranks of 10 monstrosities of the continent the very next day. In fact, she would even be placed in the top 5. At this moment, Wuxia took a long, deep breath as his gaze fell upon the spirit butterfly. She was just too beautiful. She was as beautiful as God. Take her current posture for instance. She looked like an angel coming down from the heavens, radiating dreamlike glow. Wuxia slightly narrowed his eyes as everything he wanted to know presented before him. Race, mutant golden Kaiserei hind rank, Tier 3 innate talent, sky-shattering brilliance. She can emit a dazzling light that possesses unparalleled destructive power, capable of shattering the very sky. Unique abilities, Dreamweaver, dreams and reality have no difference for her. She could make the impossible possible by depicting reality in dreams, such as her body melting into space. Butterfly wings, as the highest level wing scales, her wings are as sharp as blades of light. Butterfly storm, with a flap of her wings she can stir up raging tempests that could destroy everything in their path. Annihilation beam, gathering the rays of light in the surrounding, she can converge them into a beam that can annihilate everything. After taking a thorough look, Wuxia couldn't help but secretly praise. As a mutant butterfly of Tier 3 she was indeed remarkable. Just her unique ability, illusion, which granted her the ability to impossible possible, was enough to make her rule over a territory, not to mention her ability to emit a brilliant light that could shatter the very sky. If such an existence was let loose on a battlefield, she would bring a catastrophe of immense proportions. This was what a Tier 3 transcendent was, also known as catastrophe by the humans. Yet, much to countless mutant beasts' bewilderment, such a powerful creature unexpectedly chose to join Misty Mountains. The mutant beasts knew about her joining because at this moment, all mutant beasts heard a dreamy voice echoing in their minds. I've long heard of the divine tree's brilliance and today I've the honor to lay eyes upon it. I ask the divine tree to be merciful and not shut your doors for me. The voice was very light, giving a bewildering feeling as if it was coming from far away, but also close at hand. Be that as it may, the implicit meaning in her words were wide apparent to most ordinary mutant beasts, let alone the great beasts. And, nodding his acknowledgement, the corner of Wuxia's lips curved upwards. Then, as if he had thought of something, with a single thought, the glowing green specks that had covered most of the sky converged, amidst the somewhat bewildered gazes of the spirit butterfly. In a moment the green specks turned into a torrent rushing into the spirit butterfly, causing a loud explosion, jolting her. As the green specks slowly assimilated into her body, a unique aura emanated from her, sending the mutant beasts into euphoria. This was the aura of the divine tree, and a sign used by Misty Mountains to identify companions. Now, since the spirit butterfly was also exuding this aura, it naturally signified that she had truly joined Misty Mountains. In light of this, it was not difficult to understand why each mutant beast was excited. After all, any addition of a Tier 3 would significantly boost the standing of Misty Mountains in the world, especially now that Misty Mountains had more than one Tier 3. With this in mind, Wuxia's gaze shifted to a nearby chubby figure, wearing a straw hat. Chapter 493 Unbreakable Defense of Brewmaster. Tier 3 huh? Wuxia murmured to himself, gazing at old Ninth Brewmaster, with a hint of satisfaction. Given his current strength, he could clearly sense the majestic spiritual energy within Brewmaster, as vast as sea. According to Wuxia's rough estimation, Brewmaster's spiritual energy had already reached a staggering 1.4 million. The current Brewmaster, even when standing on the ground, had streams of yellowish-brown energy flowing towards his feet. This was what made Brewmaster terrifying. As a creature capable of absorbing various types of spiritual energy and had been steadily amassing them over time, he finally underwent a qualitative change after advancing to Tier 3. Not to mention standing on the ground, Even standing on a glacier would result in a continuous influx of ice-attribute spiritual energy. Whether it was earth, ice, lava, or even the lightning-filled sky, wherever he was, there would be a continuous and endless influx of spiritual energy surging into him. He was always in a state of cultivation, every second and at every moment. However, that wasn't the terrifying part. The truly terrifying aspect was that Brewmaster's resistance to the four elements had also reached a terrifying level. It could be said that Brewmaster now was like a fortress wall. Even if he stood still, his defenses were not something ordinary mutant beasts could break through. Low-level mutant beasts were not even part of the equation. As for Tier 3 transcendents like Nine Tails, her flames would be greatly weakened against Brewmaster. In close combat, his stone skin and iron bones resulting from Brewmaster's daily consumption of various minerals were enough to make one's scalp tingle. Now your defense should be unbreakable, right? A faint voice suddenly echoed in Brewmaster's mind. In response, Brewmaster too lowered the straw hat and grinned. I can't say for other things, but my defense is indeed formidable. At this point, Brewmaster thumped his chest and confidently proclaimed, as long as the divine tree does not act, the number of people who can harm can be counted on one hand. Indeed. Nodding slightly, Yuziyu agreed. When it came to defense, Brewmaster was even a level or two higher than turtle-type mutant beasts of the same tier. Combined with his resistance to various elements, his terror was truly beyond words. Although his spiritual energy was currently only a little over 1 million, it would be quite challenging to inflict any kind of injury on him even for transcendents with spiritual energy reaching 4 to 5 million. The only beings that could pose a certain threat to Brewmaster were anomalies like Ling Air and Aurora. One could burn soul with fire while the other had formidable psychic power. If Aurora could break through again and harness her terrifying mental power, she could go toe-to-toe with Brewmaster. Thinking this, Yuziyu's gaze shifted again. The next moment, a 5-colored spirit flower, radiating all the worldly beauty, came into view. Are you about to break through? Soon. Aurora grinned, her voice carrying a hint of pride. Unlike mutant beasts and even humans, the breakthrough of mutant plants was extraordinarily difficult. It was only because of Yuziyu's protection that Aurora could focus on cultivating without distractions. Otherwise, the harassment from mutant beasts and humans alone would have been overwhelming. That's great. This immediately brought a smile on Yuziyu's lips, leaving him satisfied. Aurora was a great help to him. If she could have another breakthrough, it would be even better for him. However, as if thinking of something, Yuziyu also asked proactively, how goes the offering? Yuziyu's inquiry immediately caused Aurora's petals to tremble slightly. After a moment, she responded in a voice tinged with excitement. You should praise me for this divine tree. Stating this, she immediately continued with the report. Up till now, 28 superhumans have already signed a pact with Misty Mountains. Among them, one is an Apex Order Tier 2, the Iron Fist Tyrant, Benson. Additionally, there are 6 Third Order Tier 2 Superhams. Apart from these, the rest are Second Order Tier 2s. 28, huh? Hearing this, the corner of Yuziyu's lips rose into a smile, feeling satisfied. With a slight curl of his lips, Yuziyu seemed somewhat satisfied. This was not a small number. With so many superhumans joining them, the influence behind them would definitely not be ordinary. Moreover, among them was also an Apex Order Tier 2. At this moment, Aurora took the initiative to speak again. Among these 28, 8 are Chinese and 13 are Russians. This should be the effect of the Iron Fist Tyrant. As for the other 7, they're either from the Alliance of Southeastern Nations or from some remote small nations. Ah, yes. There's one more thing worth mentioning. Most of these superhumans have signed secret contracts with us. In this regard, it was kept secret because all countries were wary and strictly forbid their superhumans from approaching Misty Mountains. But now there is no need. I think it is because you broke through. After your breakthrough, this unwritten rule soon got lifted. As a result, Misty Mountains has seen a continuous influx of superhumans. Just in these past 2 days, 2 superhumans have chosen to offer sacrifices. After listening to Aurora's consecutive reports, Yuziyu gained a rough understanding. Previously, various countries were cautious of Misty Mountains. But now, with Yuziyu's breakthrough to Tier 4, his terrifying power was enough to suppress the entire continent. They couldn't afford to be vigilant out in the open anymore. In other words, it wasn't that the unwritten rule was lifted, but rather, it became more deeply hidden. However, no nation dared to openly oppose it. At least for now, no nation had the confidence to offend Misty Mountains. Of course, this was only one reason. Another reason was the recent invasion of sea creatures had caused severe damage worldwide. Not to mention small remote countries, even the almighty China was almost devastated. According to reliable information from Ling Air's side, the invasion of sea creatures had affected dozens of Chinese cities, with several cities permanently razed to the ground. When the tide finally receded, all that was left in their places was nothing but wreckage. This showed how terrifying the sea creatures' invasion was. In the face of such a terrifying army knocking on their doors, China and other nations had no time on their hands to deal with other matters. As such, how could they take the risk of opposing certain superhumans who wanted to approach Misty Mountains? Thinking this, Yuziyu smiled and also suggested, "We can try to contact these superhumans and encourage them to expand their influence more fiercely and quickly. If needed, Misty Mountains can also provide some assistance." Saying this, Yuziyu also looked at the Nine Tails and instructed, "Nine Tails, I leave this matter to you. If the superhumans who have signed contracts with us seek our assistance, you can send someone to provide them support. Make sure to stabilize their influence amongst the humans as soon as possible." "All right." Nine Tails readily accepted the mission, grinning. "I guess Master is no longer satisfied with expanding his influence among mutant beasts alone." Chapter 494, Blood Red Willow Leaf. Meanwhile, somewhere in the deep sea, amidst the mournful cries of mutant sea creatures, a colossal mutant sea creature fell with a deafening bang, giving out a low and weak cry, shaking the narrow sea trench. "Wise One! No, no!" One after another, powerful mutant sea creatures, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people, let out mournful cries. Their sage, hailed as the most mysterious existence in the sea, actually fell. However, what sent them into fury and despair was that his fall was not due to his life nearing its end. Grinding their teeth tightly, each powerful mutant sea creature stared blankly at the sage's forehead. Inserted there was the crystalline willow leaf, vibrating. Surprisingly, it had now gained blood-red color. Tree monster, the proud flood dragon king among the 6 kings of sea clans gathered here kept muttering, his face distorted in agony. He had the closest and deepest relationship with the sage. So, how could the sight of the sage breathing his last right in front of him not send him into fury? Ruhar, burning with fury, even his dragon roar carried a hint of killing intent. At this moment, as his eyes gazed upon the blood-red willow leaf inserted into the sage's forehead vibrate continuously, the Flood Dragon King's eyes flashed with a hint of savagery. Ruhr, giving out a mournful cry, he slapped the water with his tails, shooting straight towards the sage's forehead. But before he could get close to the sage, swoosh, swoosh, one figure after another blocked his path. "You're trying to stop me?" Enraged, the Flood Dragon King's voice became colder and colder. "We can't afford to offend that tree monster," a beautiful creature with the upper half of a human and lower half of a fish gently persuaded. Another massive creature beside her joined in, reminding, "Don't forget what the Wise One said before he died." The Wise One. Murmuring, the Flood Dragon King couldn't help but recall the sage's instructions. "First, unless you have reached Tier 3, never provoke that tree monster. It's a monster you cannot afford to provoke. Second, the invasion of the land should be temporarily halted." "I was too hasty. Before invading the land, we should unify the sea first." The sage's words echoed faintly in his ears, twisting the Flood Dragon King's face even further. Faintly, one could see the struggle in the Flood Dragon King's face. Right at that very moment, a buzzing sound suddenly resonated in the ocean. Looking toward the source, countless mutant sea creatures noticed the willow leaf inserted in the center of the sage's forehead vibrating even more fiercely. It seemed to emit a terrifying suction force, causing their greatest sage's body to continuously shrink under its influence. "Big brother!" A shrill cry escaped the Flood Dragon King's mouth, his eyes turning bloodshot. Another roar and the Flood Dragon King's eyes were bloodshot. Even the faces of the other sea kings around him were not looking good. However, feeling the increasingly terrifying aura emanating from the willow leaf, and thinking of the sage's final instructions before his death, "Absolutely do not touch this leaf," each sea king chose to remain silent. Just at this moment, as if understanding something, the Flood Dragon King, filled with grief and indignation, looked up and howled to the sky, "Tree monster! Only one of us can live under this sky." With these words, one of the most terrifying overlords in the deep sea, the Flood Dragon King, swiped his tail, rushing towards the even darker sea. The place where the Flood Dragon King was heading to had a terrifying name. The Dark Seas. Just like the notorious forbidden zones on land, The Dark Seas was also a notorious place in the deep sea. No one knew what was there. Even more so, no one knew how it came into being. Still, all mutant sea creatures knew that no mutant sea creature had ever come out from there alive. Even their most enigmatic sage had warned the mutant sea creatures to not lightly venture into it. However, this was the Flood Dragon King's choice. Each sea king heaved a sigh, staring blankly at the Flood Dragon King's departing figure. However, just as the Flood Dragon King was about to disappear from everyone's sight, his icy voice rang in everyone's ears. "If I don't come out in 10 years, I request everyone to lend me a hand." Naturally. Nodding, the other sea kings promptly agreed. As for stopping him, it was impossible. Among the 7 sea kings, except for the Sea Beast King who was not present, the remaining 6 did have some friendship towards each other. Though, the only reason they stuck together was because they owed the sage for everything he had done for them. Now, for revenge, since the Flood Dragon King chose to venture into the Dark Seas, they would all support him. After all, although the Dark Seas was terrifying, it depended on the individual. For an existence like the Flood Dragon King, who stood at the forefront of the deep sea, the Dark Seas would at worst mean that he would only have a 10% survival chance. It was at least not certain death. "Big brother, if you don't come out in 10 years, your sister will definitely bring a large army to help you. After 10 years, our sea clan will surely stir up a huge wave. Not to mention that tree monster, even the mainland will forever sink into the deep sea." Listening to the other 5 sea kings' promises, a resolute expression flashed in the depths of the Flood Dragon King's eyes. Then he declared in a cold voice, "When I break through to Tier 4, I will definitely have a showdown with that tree monster." Dropping these words, the Flood Dragon King swung his tail and transformed into a streak of dark light, shooting straight towards the Dark Sea, from where no sea creature had managed to come out. Shortly after his departure, a sharp metallic cry, like that of a sword, echoed in this part of the sea. Looking towards the source, the mutant sea creatures found their respected sage completely sucked dry by the blood-red willow leaf, leaving a completely intact bag of skin. "Wise one," gnashing its teeth, the mermaid queen tightened her fists. However, just at this moment, as if sensing something, the pupils of many powerful mutant sea creatures shrank. Then, in their somewhat bewildered gazes, that blood-red willow leaf seemingly came to life and suddenly rolled up the remaining skin of the Sea Clan sage before shooting towards the sky, leaving a bloody red streak trailing behind. "Wise one, damn it, you even refuse to let go of the sage's last remains?" The faces of each sea king changed drastically, some couldn't help but curse loudly. However, apart from an anguished look on their faces, these sea kings did nothing but watch the streak of blood light disappear into the sky. It was because, in that instant, they all sensed a fearsome aura from it. One sharp enough to threaten their very existence. If they did anything, they believed that the willow leaf, now sentient, would not hesitate to plunge into their bodies in an instant. They couldn't describe or explain it, but the sea kings could all sense the terrifying nature of that blood-red willow leaf. "Che." The mermaid queen heaved a deep breath. At this moment she finally understood why the Flood Dragon King left so resolutely. It was not that he didn't want to destroy this willow leaf, but he couldn't. At least not at the moment. Thinking of this, the mermaid queen also remembered what the sage had warned them before his death. The tree monster is a monster you cannot provoke. And indeed they definitely couldn't provoke it. Just a single willow leaf wielded such terrifying power. One could just imagine how terrifying the true form of that tree monster must be. Chapter 495 Psychic Weapon. With a swoosh, a streak of blood red split through the vast sea. Immediately after, much to the astonishment of numerous mutant sea creatures, the world suddenly seemed to have dimmed, as if a black cloak had covered the entered sky. Upon closer inspection, it was revealed to be a piece of beast skin, immense in size. It stretched for thousands of feet in length and hundreds of feet in width. And yet, it had shrunk by half under the drag of that streak of blood light. Now, dragged by that blood-red streak, the spanning beast skin appeared like a continuous black cloud, surging towards the direction of the continent. At this moment, deep within Misty Mountains, Yuziyu, who had just finished dealing with trivial matters, suddenly felt something and looked in a certain direction. The next moment, to his somewhat astonished gaze, a pitch-black crack appeared in space. And within the depths of the crack, he could faintly see a crimson light, as bloody as blood, flickering. "What's that? What a sharp aura!" Exclamations rang out as powerful mutant beasts within Misty Mountains emerged from their lairs, raising their heads and looking at the sky. After a moment, a continuously black color spanning across the sky entered their sight, resembling a dark cloud. But upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a piece of beast skin. At the forefront of the beast skin, creatures as powerful as Ninetails and Brewmaster, as well as creatures like the spirit butterfly, could clearly see a blood-red willow leaf. "No need to worry," a faint voice echoed in the void. The voice of the divine tree immediately put the mutant beasts at ease. Although the sharp aura coming from above almost tore their flesh, for some reason, as long as Wuxia was by their side, they felt no fear. This kind of feeling might not be understood by these mutant beasts, but among humans, it was called reliance, or belief. With something to rely on in their hearts, they could rest assured. However, right at that moment, "You're finally back." A light laughter echoed as Wuxia turned his gaze towards the streak of blood-red light that ripped the sky apart. It was red as blood and carried a strong scent of blood. Yet even more terrifying than the scent of blood was the sharp aura radiating from it, which could tear through anything. Just by looking at it, many mutant beasts felt a stinging sensation in their eyes. For those with sharp eyes, such as the peregrine falcons and other birds, a drop of blood even bled out from the corners of their eyes. "Don't look at it too much," warned Wuxia, attempting to control the blood-red willow leaf. Much to Wuxia's pleasant surprise, in just a few days it was away from him, the blood-red willow leaf had undergone significant changes, not only in appearance but also in sharpness, which was a whole notch higher than before. If it weren't for the faint connection he still had with it, Wuxia would have suppressed it with his own hands. However, at this moment, seemingly sensing Wuxia's intentions, the distant streak of blood-red tearing space suddenly trembled. It seemed to be nervous yet also afraid. However, sensing the increasingly intense summons, the blood-red willow leaf slowly emerged from the torn black crack. At this moment, with a flash of thought, Wuxia's spiritual energy began to surge, terrifying and extreme like a tsunami. Along with the roaring spiritual energy, 2 green willow leaves also rose from Wuxia's trunk. At this moment, sensing the familiar aura, the blood-red willow leaf hovering in the sky suddenly trembled. Immediately after, to Wuxia's somewhat expectant gaze, it suddenly accelerated and shot straight towards him. With a deafening boom, its speed suddenly soared, arriving before Wuxia in the blink of an eye, as if tearing through space. At this moment, Wuxia did not choose to dodge or defend. Rather, he opened a crack in his trunk. Immediately after, a thunderous boom reverberated, shook the world as a blood-red wave visible to the naked eyes spread out like shockwaves in all directions. At this moment, if one could look past the blood-colored shockwave, they would undoubtedly see the blood-red willow leaf gradually seeping into Wuxia's tree body bit by bit. Originally, it was Wuxia's natal willow leaf, tempered within Wuxia's body day and night. And now, after completely devouring the essence of a Tier 3, a terrifying mutant sea creature with spiritual energy level of 5 to 6 million, it had developed a hint of sentience. However, this trace of sentience was very weak, and a blank slate when it came to the understanding of the world, like a newborn life. If it weren't for the connection between Wuxia and it would not have torn through space to come here. And just now, Wuxia had also drawn out the other 2 natal willow leaves that shared the same origin with it. Then, drawn by the familiar aura, the blood-red willow leaf recognized Wuxia as its true master. In this way it chose to return. At this moment, if one looked from Wuxia's perspective, they could even see that this blood-red willow leaf had gained a status screen of its own. Like any other life, it now had its own abilities. Whales roar. When flying at extreme speed, it can issue an ancient whale's roar, subsequently creating horrifying shockwaves, creating an intimidating pressure. What's even more daunting is that from a distance, it looks like a gigantic whale the size of a continent is charging over, with an extremely alarming momentum. It was a very powerful ability. Even if Wuxia didn't use it, he could imagine the terrifying scene it would create when he summoned this blood-red willow leaf. That kind of scene was definitely not ordinary. However, suppressing his curiosity, Wuxia abandoned the idea of summoning the blood-red willow leaf. Currently, the blood-red willow leaf was still in its infancy and needed to be nurtured. The best place for nurturing the blood-red willow leaf was naturally within Wuxia's body, in the vast ocean of spiritual energy. At this moment, if one looked into the depths of Wuxia's body, they could even see the blood-red willow leaf quietly floating in a vast ocean of spiritual energy, resembling a starry sky, enjoying the waves of spiritual energy crashing over it again and again. Amidst the crashing waves, a long and lonely song echoed as a shadow of a gigantic blood-colored whale, resembling a continent, emerged in the ocean of spiritual energy. It has indeed become a psychic weapon, mumbling. Yuziu's corners of lips rose into a smile. When this blood-red willow leaf returned to his body, Yuziu had a feeling that his combat power had increased by 10 to 20% because of this blood-red willow leaf. It went without saying that it was an extremely terrifying increment. For other mutant beasts, increasing combat power by 10 to 20% might not be significant, but for him, it was beyond terrifying. After all, Yuziu's own combat power was already enough to make the world look up to him. At his level, let alone an increase of 10 to 20%, even a slight increase was terrifying. However, that was secondary. What was truly terrifying was that, with his insight, he could naturally see that this was only a partial ability of this blood-red willow leaf. With continuous tempering, he would keep unearthing the true power of this blood-red willow leaf. Chapter 496 Silver Moon, Zhang Feng. Psychic Weapon. Murmuring, Yuziu once again sized up his natal willow leaf that had already sunk into his body. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Yuziu, in some city in Russia, tap tap tap, amidst rapid running footsteps, a figure with long silver-white hair had turned into a streak of black light, shuttling through the tops of skyscrapers. Every leap, it crossed tens or even hundreds of meters and upon landing kicked the ground again, leaping towards another high-rise building. Just right behind it, amidst successive swooshes, were countless figures chasing after it. Among them several people angrily roared, "Stop right there, you damned otherkin. You bastards ought to be killed. Humph, Silver Moon, how dare you come to Russia and grab the inborn otherkin? You're seeking death." As they angrily roared, a vague ethereal glow even appeared around these humans. This ethereal glow was the sign of transcendence. Surprisingly, as many as dozens of superhumans were in pursuit of an existence called Silver Moon, 5 of whom happened to be Tier 2s. All this simply because Silver Moon was an otherkin, a race that should be exterminated. Moreover, he even kidnapped an inborn otherkin born in this city. Otherkins was an emerging race among the humans. This race possessed physical qualities far beyond humans, and more importantly, they possessed some features that did not belong to the human race. Originally, these otherkins were nothing more than subjects of an experiment conducted in China, and happened to be very small in number. However, after some freak accident, the population of otherkins unexpectedly kept increasing, to the point that they even formed a group and became a dark force lurking deep within human society. Yet it was not that big of a deal. After all, their population was just that limited. No matter how powerful they were, they couldn't stir up much of a storm. However, by chance something unexpected occurred. Humans discovered a terrifying fact. Some individuals among them possessed ancient bloodlines that had recently been awakened, granting them physical strength far surpassing that of normal humans. What was even more alarming was that they appeared to inherit some kind of legacy, enabling them to rapidly enhance their strength. These humans, whose ancient bloodlines became awakened, happened to have features of the otherkins. For example, not long ago in a city, a human grew bat wings and gained the ability to emit ultrasonic waves. In another instance, a human developed golden fur all over his body within the alliance of Southeast nations, looking like a lion in human skin. All these people possessed astonishing talents and progressed extremely quickly. What was unacceptable to humans was that they actually called themselves Bat Clan, Lion Clan, and even harbored a vague hostility towards their own humans. In light of this, humans naturally couldn't forgive or even tolerate them. Facing subsequent awakening of ancient races, mankind lumped them together with the otherkins, and even labeled them as inborn otherkins, implying them to be natural otherkins. They even issued a directive to exterminate them the very moment any of them was discovered. Of course, more often than not, they were taken to laboratories where inhumane experiments were conducted on them. As the saying went, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," the infamous Dark Council, as the deepest darkness of the human race, the dark force led by the otherkins, saved inborn otherkins when necessary. They would even absorb them into the Dark Council to strengthen their ranks. And now, one of the 3 big shots of the Dark Council, Zhang Feng, also known as Silver Moon, had come to Russia for the purpose of bringing back a golden lion who had awakened the ancient bloodline. To be precise, it was a cute little kid with golden fur. However, this one possessed fearsome talent. At a young age, he already possessed strength far exceeding his peers, and could also give out a thunderous roar, echoing for kilometers. If it weren't for the golden fur, giving him the appearance of a lion in human form, humans wouldn't believe him to be an inborn otherkin. Humph. Snorting in disdain, Zhang Feng reached out for the Gorewolf saber at his waist, sensing the humans getting closer and closer. This was the demon blade bestowed upon him by the chairwoman of the Dark Council, Gorewolf, a blade that would require a blood sacrifice every time it was drawn. However, Zhang Feng didn't like shedding blood and rarely drew this blade. But now, sensing the relentless pursuit of the humans behind him, Zhang Feng had lost his patience. As Zhang Feng took a long, deep breath, as a moon symbol faintly appeared on his forehead. However, even more eye-catching was the demon blade he was holding, which was now surrounded by a blood-red mist. And within this blood mist, one could see a faint blood-red wolf head around Zhang Feng's right hand. "It's very quiet here, it's a nice place for your grave." Slowly putting down the little kid covered in golden fur, already unconscious, Zhang Feng turned around. "You finally decided to stop running, huh?" Grinning at Tier 2 Russian sneered. "The infamous Silver Moon, huh? The sneaky bastard has always been lurking in some small countries. Who would have thought that he would actually grow balls and come to Russia and even wants to take away this inborn otherkin, eh? Run? Why would I run?" With a rare laughter, the corner of Zhang Feng's lips rose into a smirk. Then, much to the Russian superhuman's disbelief, a crisp cutting sound echoed before a bloodline appeared on the neck of the mocking Tier 2. And at this moment, their attention was finally drawn to Silver Moon's figure, which had materialized in front of the Tier 2 Russian out of thin air. "If it weren't for the chairwoman telling me not to reveal too much of my strength, do you think you would still be alive?" Faintly chuckling, Zhang Feng kicked the ground, creating a powerful shockwave, disrupting everyone's sight, while his figure swished through the air. However, the vigilant Russians were quick to spot his presence right before them, as a 3-meter-long blood-red crescent hurtled in their direction. Asterisk boom. Asterisk accompanied by a crisp impact, a Tier 2 Russian promptly raised his heavy hammer, blocking the incoming attack. However, at this moment, the Tier 2 Russian's expression suddenly changed drastically. Because, at the moment of impact he was struck by a terrifying force. Too weak. With a hint of a smile, Zhang Feng exerted force again with his right wrist. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the knees of the Tier 2 Russian wielding the heavy hammer buckled, much to the disbelief of Russians. What they found even more horrifying was that cracks slowly began to appear on the heavy hammer, with a trace of blood appearing slowly on the forehead of this big man. Chapter 497, The Third Round of Spiritual Energy Tide. Amidst the greenish mist slowly rising from the ground, a cascade of moonlight silently poured down through the clouds, streaming into the depths of the forest like waterfalls, drawing a dreamy scene. At this moment, tap tap tap, accompanied by heavy footsteps, a figure with long silver-white hair slowly emerged from the thin mist. The long blade in his hand was still dripping with blood, and behind him lay a pile of corpses. Under the moonlight, Zhang Feng's combat prowess was no less than that of an apex transcendent, an existence completely unmatched among peers of the same tier. So naturally a massacre awaited him. At this moment, noticing the little kid with golden fur crawling up from the ground, Zhang Feng's eyes narrowed slightly and asked gently, "You're awake?" And the little kid with golden fur nodded slightly with a smile. Immediately after, his gaze turned colder, gazing at the pile of corpses behind Zhang Feng as he spoke in an ice-cold voice, "If my powers have fully awakened, I alone could have slaughtered them all." Zhang Feng didn't justify it with an answer and maintained a calm, stoic face. At this moment, seemingly noticing Zhang Feng's expression, the little kid pouted and muttered as if sulking, "I have the bloodline of the Golden Lion. This is a higher-order bloodline among the ancient Lion clan. Higher-order bloodline, how?" Muttering softly, Zhang Feng's gaze also flickered with contemplation. Indeed, compared to those who awaken the same bloodline, this little kid is on a completely different level. His fur is dazzling and golden, and there is a hazy golden halo around him like a sun. Feeling the power flowing within the furry kid, Zhang Feng's eyes narrowed even more. The bloodline of these inborn otherkins is also divided into grades? Sighing inwardly, Zhang Feng slowly started walking towards the little kid. Meanwhile, in the depths of misty mountains, stood a figure under a colossal tree, and right behind him was a golden monkey standing quietly. However, if one were to look into the depths of Golden Monkey's eyes at this moment, they would surely notice deep complexity, as well as a hint of reverence hidden beneath it. "Master, congratulations on your breakthrough to Tier 4? Golden Monkey congratulated earnestly in a calm voice. And, nodding slightly, Yuziu's humanoid figure, woven from countless rootlets, also turned around, glancing deeply at Golden Monkey. Golden Monkey was one of the 3 war generals under Yuziu's command. His skin was as tough as bronze, his bones as sturdy as iron. He was impervious to swords and spears, and his origins were shrouded in mystery. During the time Wuxia had not seen him, he had already reached Tier 3. It was really incomprehensible, but it was the truth. Thanks to the ancient legacy he possessed, he had already broken through, unbeknownst to everyone. There was no denying that it gave Wuxia quite a surprise. At this moment, Golden Monkey took the initiative and spoke. Master, if my guess is correct, the myriad races are set to return. The myriad races are about to return? Muttering, Wuxia also became pensive. He was naturally familiar with the myriad races. The human race was also one of the myriad races. Their so-called return referred to their various means left behind by them in the previous era, set to resurface in this current era. The recent onslaught of the 7 Sea Kings must be also because they had obtained some inheritance of the Sea Clan of the previous era. In other words, they could be called the original Sea Clan. And then Golden Monkey claimed to have awakened ancient wisdom, which makes him a member of the Monkey Clan. Can you elaborate? After a moment of contemplation, Wuxia asked proactively. Sure. Nodding, Golden Monkey recalled his recent observations before explaining, the methods of the myriad races return vary. However, in this emerging world, the safest and most guaranteed method should be bloodline awakening. The awakened bloodline carries their respective inheritance. After receiving the inheritance and properly cultivating according to it, one would undergo continuous metamorphosis, ultimately transforming into a true member of that particular clan. Wuxia's eyes couldn't help but become pensive after this revelation. Another inheritance. Sighing inwardly, Wuxia also felt somewhat helpless. Such methods were indeed safe and secure. Had Golden Monkey not revealed it to him, Wuxia wouldn't have known about his inheritance from the previous era. Such inheritances could provide a huge assistance on the path of cultivation. At least, the way ahead was clear and secure. However, at this moment, as if thinking of something, Wuxia asked again, why are the myriad races returning now? Wuxia was a bit confused about this. Not only was Golden Monkey reminding him, but even Ling Air's message had mentioned the frequent appearances of inborn otherkins recently. Well, momentarily taken aback, Golden Monkey raised his head and cast a deep glance at Wuxia. Then he seemed to have made a decision and answered in a firm voice, if I'm not mistaken, the 3rd round of the spiritual energy tide is approaching. The 3rd round of spiritual energy tide? This revelation brought a slight change in Wuxia's expression. The spiritual energy tide was no trivial matter. When the 2nd round of the spiritual energy tide swept through the world, everyone and everything underwent a rapid evolution. It could be said that a spiritual energy tide had pushed the world's evolution forward by decades. Yet now, another round of spiritual energy tide was set to arrive. Taking a long, deep breath, Wuxia suppressed his astonishment and asked, before the arrival of the 2nd round of the spiritual energy tide, there had been vague predictions among the humans. So, why is it that there is no such thing this time? Back then, before the arrival of the 2nd round of the spiritual energy tide, many human scientists proposed the theory of the spiritual energy tide. Some even proposed the theory of eras. It was precisely because of this that Wuxia confirmed the existence of the previous era. So the lack of any news among humans about the 3rd round of the spiritual energy tide set to arrive raised questions in Wuxia's mind. How is it possible that humans haven't received any information? After all, in terms of information, humans should be the most informed. At this moment, Wuxia's query surprisingly made Golden Monkey sigh before replying, this is just my speculation. Those guys wouldn't have risked returning at this time if it weren't for the arrival of the 3rd round of the spiritual energy tide. Master, the spiritual energy tide is the greatest opportunity in this world. If they miss this opportunity again, even if they return, it will be difficult for them to catch up with our cultivation speed. Speaking of this, Golden Monkey sighed with emotions as he continued, in this emerging new world, cultivation is a matter of chasing and being chased. Master, you are already at Tier 4, far surpassing everyone else. If they don't return now and wait for you to experience the 3rd round of the spiritual energy tide, which would allow your strength to further evolve, everything would be set. They would have no chance to stand against you. Though even if they return, they will likely find it difficult to shake your existence. In other words, rather than them actively choosing to return, it's more like your breakthrough, along with the arrival of the spiritual energy tide, is forcing them to come back. They are in fear. Afraid more than anything of you achieving enlightenment ahead of them. Chapter 498, The Gradually Disappearing Misty Mountains. Achieve enlightenment ahead of them. Muttering to himself, the corners of Yu's lips couldn't help but curve up slightly. Indeed, cultivation has always been a competition. One person's enlightenment meant a lack of opportunity for others. If Yu were to achieve enlightenment first, not only would the others' hopes of enlightenment diminish, but even during the process of enlightenment, they would have to face an insurmountable obstacle, Yu. It was conceivable why the myriad races chose to return now. Taking a deep breath, Yu seemed to have thought of something at this moment. The next moment he glanced at Golden Monkey and asked, "The reason humans haven't noticed the arrival of this round of spiritual energy tide is probably because it's not emerging from the depths of Earth, right?" Ah. After a momentary astonishment, Golden Monkey cupped his fists and bowed in affirmation. That seems to be the case. The third round of spiritual energy tide is likely to be the last, and after it, the world as we know it would have undergone a complete overhaul. It's just my guess, but the next terrifying spiritual energy tide is very likely to surge from outer space. Yu too agreed with Golden Monkey's speculation. Indeed. Speaking of this, Yu looked up at the starry sky above and added, sighing, "It's not just from space but quite possibly from the depths of the starry sky itself. This round of spiritual energy tide should be the most terrifying one in history, and it will sweep through the entire universe." Yu was not just making speculations. These words stemmed from the vague movements he had been feeling, thanks to his horrid strength. These movements were indescribable and unclear, but they did exist. And now, with Golden Monkey's tips, he became sure of it. These movements should be a precursor of the imminent spiritual energy tide. Only those with fearsome strength could perceive it. Apart from Ling Air, humans didn't have a single Tier 3, at least on the surface. As such, it was naturally difficult to perceive them. Whereas Yu was already a Tier 4. His terrifying strength exceeded people's imagination, and was naturally capable of sensing them. As for Golden Monkey, presumably he also had a vague feeling, and then combining it with speculation about this world, he had reached such a conclusion. Meanwhile, Yu was fine with the arrival of the third round of the spiritual energy tide, as it would accelerate the evolution of this world. This rapid evolution would bring most creatures much closer to Yu. If no one could get closer to him, who would fuel his further advancement? It would have been fine if there were no evolution points, but since evolution points were useful tools present in his arsenal, every creature could become a source for his evolution. Only when the other creatures grow stronger could Yu's reap the rewards and get more evolution points. This path would be closer to what the humans called proving one's Tao through killing. More importantly, thanks to his greater might, he could reap another terrifying harvest during the resurgence of spiritual energy. For an existence like Yu, plundering a region's spiritual energy tide was not that difficult. At that time, it would fuel Yu's strength to an even more terrifying level. While mutant beasts and humans alike might grow stronger with the spiritual energy tide, no one knew that Yu would be the biggest beneficiary of the spiritual energy tide, with his strength growing even more fearsome. Stay one step ahead, stay ahead at every step. This adage was not without any basis. Moreover, Yu also had a huge force under him, Misty Mountains. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Yu looked towards the 9 tails lying nearby and commanded, "9 tails, accelerate the expansion of Misty Mountains." "Yes, master." 9 tails promptly accepted the order. However, at this moment, as if thinking of something, the 9 tails suddenly voiced her suggestion, "Master, should we found a monster kingdom in the coming days?" "Found a monster kingdom?" Yu muttered to himself, his heart astir. However, just then a voice suddenly interrupted, "Master, it's best not to do this. Even if we do, it's better to do it quietly." "Why?" Yu's eyes couldn't help but flicker, gazing at Golden Monkey. As the saying goes, the tallest tree catches the most wind. Now that Misty Mountains is so influential, who knows how many forces are eyeing us. With the myriad races returning as well, if we boldly establish a kingdom at this time, it will surely arouse the vigilance of the myriad races. We would definitely become the main thorn in their eyes. Even if Master is not afraid, if we become their target, it would surely be troublesome. Hearing Golden Monkey's explanation, Yu also came to agree with him. "You're right." But after a moment, as if thinking of something, Yu narrowed his eyes slightly as a smile bloomed on his lips. "Then let's just have some fun in Misty Mountains." "Have some fun?" Somewhat puzzled, both Golden Monkey and the 9 tails looked at each other. At this moment, sensing the confusion of Golden Monkey and the 9 tails, Yu smiled and explained, I will use the mist to envelop the entire Misty Mountains and isolate ourselves from the entire world. At that point, with the mist as the boundary, Misty Mountains will become another world. We'll establish a powerful force within this world and slowly grow bigger, taking in mutant beasts and humans from the outside every now and then. The day I lift the fog, I hope that a terrifying force capable of shaking the entire world emerges. Finishing his words, Wuxia glanced deeply at Nine Tails and Golden Monkey and asked, smiling, "Now tell me, can you two do it?" Exchanging a glance, Nine Tails and Golden Monkey both grinned and affirmed, "But of course." "Fantastic." Nodding his acknowledgement, Wuxia raised his perspective to overlook the entire Misty Mountains. After a moment, a majestic voice suddenly echoed in everyone's minds, "Come to me." Hearing this voice, White Tiger gave out a thunderous roar before taking flight. The purple dragon flying amidst the clouds also gave out a dragon roar before diving down, transforming into a purple lightning bolt. But that was not all. On the ground, amidst successive tremors, a black tide of beasts surged towards Wuxia like waves, including the great beast, Snake Queen, Little White, and even core members of various clans of Misty Mountains. For a moment, the entire Misty Mountains was beset with turmoil. However, what they didn't know was that the boundary of Misty Mountains delineated by mist was becoming increasingly blurred. Faintly, the entire Misty Mountains seemed to be disappearing from this world. Wuxia's ability Hallucinogen had already reached level 4, and coupled with the mastery of the mist, it was enough to make the entire Misty Mountains vanish from the world. Not to mention seeing it, if someone stepped into this place they would just be circling around a spot. Of course, those skilled in psychic power or with strong intuition were another matter. Creatures like these, even if ordinary, could still locate Misty Mountains. But even if they found it, so what? Wuxia just didn't want Misty Mountains to exist in the eyes of the world. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.